435 House seats, 35 in the Senate, and of course, the White House are up for grabs tonight after perhaps one of the most tense and highest turnouts campaigns in recent memory.
We're all in masks and socially distanced here. Other than that, our coverage at Citrus TV is going to be the same as always. We're here to give you election updates from New York and across the nation. Analysts will break down races and tell us what to expect from this election as well as the next 4 years.
There are also some key seats right here in New York. The fight between John Katko and Dana Balter, Anthony Brindisi and Claudia Tenney, and more. Tonight, I'm Manny Martinez.
And I'm Anthony Dabbundo. Manny and I are leading a team of researchers over in the other room, following every key race and battleground state. We're covering what many are calling the most important race of their lifetime, and what both candidates have characterized as the fight for the soul of the nation. 3.5 hours of election coverage here at Citrus TV starts right now.
Together we are taking back our country. We are returning power to you, the American people.
Got a whole lot of work to do. If I'm elected your president, I'm going to act, and I'm going to act on day one.
We're going to have a red wave. They call it the Great Red Wave, like nobody's ever seen before.
I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'll govern as an American president.
Welcome into Citrus TV's election coverage. We're starting off the night with the latest results from a few states around the nation.
First of all, let's go with the total electoral college count right now. Joe Biden has an 85 count, Donald Trump at 55, and one of the key states up for grabs is Florida, and that should be ready to call soon.
Absolutely. Florida is looking very, very tough for Joe Biden right now. As you can see, President Trump has a pretty solid lead right now. The key stat there is that Joe Biden is drastically underperforming in Miami-Dade County. We're still going to get some results in from the Panhandle as the night progresses. We're going to be talking about that one shortly, Brandon.
And on top of that, some of the other states that are competitive still up for grabs right now. Ohio leaning Biden with less than half the votes in. Biden also has a lead in North Carolina with about 60% of the vote in.
We're going to be hearing from these states throughout the night, but first we're going to go right here to New York State. The polls are still open here in New York. Just a half an hour to go. They close at 9 p.m. Citrus TV News' reporter Katie Lane is right outside Huntington Hall on Marshall Street. That's the closest site to campus and where many students choose to cast their ballot in person. Katie, how busy is Huntington Hall right now?
Thank you guys. Yes, I'm live outside Huntington Hall where the students here and the voters pretty slim, but it was packed today because Huntington Hall is one of the most popular spots for student voters because of its proximity to campus. Now, a lot of students who didn't vote here today, they voted via mail-in ballots or absentee ballots. And as you know, many students come to Syracuse University from around the United States, so they also voted via mail-in ballot and absentee ballot. Now, Erin Lyons, a Citrus TV correspondent, she spoke with some of these students, many of them first-time voters, but also well-seasoned voters, to find out what they thought about the 2020 election.
Students face more than one decision on Election Day, not just who to vote for, but how to vote. They have to choose between mail-in or in-person voting. Maxwell professor Mark Brockway says many students choose to mail in absentee ballots.
So students can either vote at their home district, and then they can also vote at their university sometimes.
And on the ballot, students generally choose parties instead of individual candidates.
Essentially a lot of just straight ticket voting.
So whether students are voting by mail
or voting in person at the polls, there's still more students voting than in the last presidential election. And with today's potential turnout, student voting here in Syracuse and across the nation could surge to historic levels.
Anyway, college students are definitely participating more in this election. I would say definitely even than 4 years ago.
A Tufts University study shows more than 5 million people under 30 already voted before October 23rd. And a study from Harvard says 63% of students plan to definitely vote this year. That's a level of enthusiasm not seen since 2008, when President Barack Obama won his historic first term.
Since I'm old enough to vote, I feel like it's important for me to actually be a part of change.
I think this is probably the biggest election so far in my lifetime because it is our future.
Students are energized by the candidates.
They're big personalities. They're people that we know a lot about.
And by certain issues that feel more important this year.
I think it's because so much is on the line right now.
They're just more personal.
Professor Brockway says the pandemic also helped educate student voters.
Increase attention to absentee, early vote by mail kind of processes are going to boost, student participation.
As student turnout surges, their votes could have a bigger impact than ever before. For Citrus TV News, I'm Erin Lyons.
Thank you, Erin. Now, if you still need to vote, you can come down to Huntington Hall until 9 p.m. tonight. That's when polls close. And I'll be sure to check back in with you guys around that time. For now, Katie Lane, Citrus TV News.
25 minutes till those polls close. Katie, thank you. Before we move forward, Arkansas has just been called for President Trump. That's 6 votes for him. Joe Biden still has 85 electoral votes, and Trump reaches 61 with that. Voting has looked a lot different this year, meaning election night is going to as well. Anthony Dabbundo and Manny Martinez are joining us right now to tell us what we can expect results-wise. Guys?
Yeah, so, Anthony, let's be clear from the very beginning. We might not know for sure by the end of our broadcast the winner of the presidency, but by sometime tonight we should have some sort of idea as to where the race is going. It's just past 8:30 right now. So let's go over what we have. Polls are closed in Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, and Florida. What's catching your eye in the Sunshine State?
Okay, so we look at Florida. And how this typically works is that the Democrats will build a big lead early in the mail-in votes, and then the Republican candidate will surpass him. Now, it did not take long for Donald Trump to surpass Joe Biden in the state of Florida, and he is on his way to a win there. But when we look at what the reason is, Miami-Dade County, heavily Hispanic, heavily Cuban. Hillary Clinton won the county by 30 points. It's the southeastern part of the state. Trump is down about 10 there now. That's a 20-point overperformance. So even though President Trump is underperforming in St. Pete and in Jacksonville and Duval County, even though Biden's running ahead there, the margins in Miami-Dade, no Florida Democrat can make that up.
Right, let's go to Georgia. What are you seeing there?
So when we look at Georgia, it's a little bit different. When we look at Georgia right now, it's a little bit different than Florida does because Atlanta's having some issues reporting votes. So right now, in Georgia, we're still waiting on some Fulton County. We're still waiting on some Cobb County. So Trump does have a lead here. We've had mostly rural numbers. It's going to be too early to say. The question is, can the Democrats get that suburban swing they need in the northern part of Georgia and Atlanta to win the state? But if Florida's not going well, Georgia probably isn't either.
Another one of the states that there's always a focus on every election is Ohio. As Ohio goes, so does the election. What are you seeing this time around tonight?
So Ohio came in, and there's one county that I do want to highlight, and it's Delaware County, Ohio. It's the northern suburbs of Columbus, very educated, pretty wealthy counties. And as we take a look at Ohio, right here in Delaware County, Biden with the early vote running ahead there by almost a dozen points. Hillary Clinton lost the county by 17. So unless Republicans are able to make up a huge gap there, Biden's running ahead in the north, but he's running behind in the south. So it's a very close race so far. But definitely a good start for Donald Trump, given where many thought the race was prior to tonight.
Absolutely. Michael, Brandon?
Thank you guys very much. We're going to be checking back with you guys throughout the night as we get those election results. And this year, final election results may not be certain until weeks after the election. Talking Points analyst Natalie Fahmy is here to tell us how COVID-19 is impacting this year's election results.
Thanks, guys. This year in Onondaga County, every registered voter had 3 options to vote: early voting, mail-in vote, or by casting your ballot today, Election Day. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a surge in mail-in ballots. Onondaga County Election Commissioner Dustin Zarni says they expect at least 125,000 total mail-in ballots this year, compared to 16,000 in 2016.
I do think that it is an enthused year, especially for Democrats. We expected higher turnout this year anyways, and by making it as easy as possible, that usually results in higher turnout, especially among unlikely voters.
You had the chance to mail in your ballot until today, as long as it is postmarked on or before this date, November 3rd. But for those who sent in their ballot weeks or months ago, they're able to change their mind and go to the polls at any time. Another reason, Zarni says mail-in ballots will cause a delay in final results.
So while on election night we will release all our in-person and early voting totals, absentees won't be counted for at least a week to 2 weeks after the election before they're finally done. So people will have to get used to having delayed results or only partial results and waiting for the absentees to come in.
But nationally, the concern remains that not everyone's mail-in ballot will be counted. In some states, this issue is being brought to trial. Minnesota's federal court recently ruled that mailed ballots must be received by November 3rd, cutting out their original week-long grace period. But in some battleground states, such as Pennsylvania and North Carolina, the Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of absentee ballots being accepted past Election Day. And these rulings come after thousands have already mailed in their ballots.
And it's not just absentee voting that's more popular this year because of the pandemic. Early voting numbers are higher than ever across the country.
And voters from all over the country lined up for hours to vote. Citrus TV analyst Oscar Alferman explains how this new trend could impact overall voter turnout.
Thanks, guys. According to a count made by the United States Elections Project at the University of Florida, almost 90 million people have voted early in the 2020 election. This rush to vote early has multiple causes, the main one being the coronavirus pandemic and the concern about overcrowded voting places on Election Day leading to virus spread. But that only tells part of the story. Early voters in Texas, for example, have already exceeded the total number of votes in the state 4 years ago, indicating that voter turnout could be higher than ever. In fact, it could be the highest in a century. In 2016, voter turnout was just under 55%. Turnout for a general election has not exceeded 60% since 1968, when Richard Nixon won his first term in office. The last president to be elected in an election with over 65% turnout, William Howard Taft in 1908. 8 years before that, turnout exceeded 70%. Experts are forecasting that over 150 million Americans will vote in this election, which would be the most ever. And if that number exceeds 160 million, it could break the 65% mark, and it would mean a shattering of the previous norm. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Oscar. And the battle for New York's 24th congressional district between incumbent John Katko and challenger Dana Bolter has been hard fought. The tightly contested race has a lot of eyes on it. We've got Anthony Dabbundo and Manny Martinez back in studio to tell us what we need to know and what we can expect tonight. Guys?
John Katko was first elected to Congress in 2014. He won by 20 points in 2016. He faced Bolter in 2018. He only won by 5, and now Bolter's back in a much more favorable environment here in 2020 with a chance to unseat the 3-term congressman. But Dana Bolter has some advantages here, given that Joe Biden is expected to carry the district.
Right, and what Bolter is relying on is the fact that she is really painting John Katko as an ardent supporter of President Trump. She is really running her campaign against President Trump. And John Katko, he's also painting with broad strokes here and trying to portray Dana Bolter as a very liberal and too extreme candidate for Central New York. And both sides, it's been ugly, quite frankly.
We've been bombarded with ads. We've seen Biden and Bolter running ads together. Biden's first congressional endorsement of the entire cycle was Dana Bolter here in Central New York. And of course, John Katko, one of the more moderate Republicans in the House caucus for the Republicans, he's hoping he can get that crossover support from some Biden voters to give him another term.
Right, and now we go live to Citrus TV's Ricky Sayer. He's at the Lancaster Spiritual Renewal Polling Center. Ricky, what do you have for us?
Thanks, guys. I'm here outside of the Spiritual Renewal Center polling place. We are just blocks away from where many students live, and they were coming here to vote today. Dana Bolter, the New York 24 congressional candidate for the Democrats, was also here today, both speaking with poll workers and speaking with us. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, we're going to tell you what we're doing. We're going to be out across Syracuse, both speaking with voters who voted today, as well as giving you updates from the Bolter campaign. A little bit hard to come by in these pandemic times, but we'll get you them when we can. We also want to let you know that while I'm not wearing a mask right now, if we're going inside of a building, we're going anywhere where it's appropriate, we will be wearing masks. But as I said before, Dana Bolter was here, and we did get to ask her a few questions. We asked her what her confidence level is going into tonight. Of course, the question always, what is the mood? We are hoping to get it from her.
Well, we're not going to have a result tonight. So I feel really good about this election. I am confident that we have made the case to voters about what is at stake in this race. I'm confident that we have laid out a very clear choice between John Katko and myself. And based on the feedback that I get and based on what we see happening across this district and across the country, I'm confident that we're going to be successful.
We do want to hear from you tonight. We have set up a group me where you can join and tell us what you're feeling as the vote tally comes in. Whatever vote tally we get, you can find that by going on the Citrus TV News Twitter page. The link is there from my Twitter account. Join that. Tell us what you are feeling. And again, we will be out across Syracuse, so you might see us, talk to us, tell us what you think. For now, reporting here outside of the Spiritual Renewal Center, Ricky Sayer, Citrus TV News.
Thank you very much, Ricky. We're going to be hearing from him really throughout the night. He's going to be on an Easter egg hunt throughout central New York, going to these different locations. Now, we talk about the results we've seen so far. We've seen promising numbers for President Trump from Florida, but Florida is going to be uncharacteristic compared to the rest of the South. Isn't that right, Brandon?
Oh, no, absolutely. And there are some other states that are going to be much closer. Georgia, like Anthony said, it's going to take a while to get those results because, again, the voting issues in Atlanta cause those results. They're going to be delays, so we're not going to expect that for a while. But, looking at North Carolina and Texas right now, both of those are trending well in Biden's direction. North Carolina more so than Texas. Basically, right now, Biden is outperforming Clinton in the Texas major cities as well as the suburbs right now. But based on the current trajectory of things, he's going to have to continue to bump up those outperforming numbers if he wants a chance to win the state. North Carolina right now, though, is still very much in play, and the numbers are very favorable with him up by, by a decent amount. He's actually up by 6 points with 2/3 of the vote in. So, again, there's still mostly rural votes left to come in. Those should be expected to favor President Trump. But again, that's a 6-point margin with 67% in. That's going to be a big amount of gap to make up. And then going over to Ohio, this is the thing that's caught my eye first. And it was the thing Anthony mentioned about Delaware County. That is really telling about the sign in Ohio. And I've always thought coming into this night that Ohio, North Carolina, and Florida were going to be our biggest indicator states because of all sort of swing states. Those are the ones by far the likeliest to be decided. Tonight we should have Florida officially called for the president very soon. But looking on the Ohio side, Joe Biden is not only outperforming Hillary Clinton, he is running up the score right now in some of these suburban districts. And so that could play a big role. And if Biden can pull out Ohio and North Carolina, the path for a Trump victory is very minimal.
You're very right, Brandon. And so the thing that we're going to look at, and this is going to be a refrain throughout the night as we look at these results, there's going to be a big difference, and you can see this in these key southern states. We're looking at potentially a big difference between some of these Senate seats and the way President Trump performs, and that's going to tell you something. One of the big problems with the Trump presidency, one of the big problems with his re-election campaign, is he's underperforming with suburban voters. You go back to 2012, you go back to 2008, those were the strongholds for Republicans. That's not true anymore.
We'll have to see how that all plans out as the night progresses. And Congressman John Kakko here in New York's 24th has been serving in the House since 2015. And Balter tried to unseat him before during the midterms, but she failed. And Kakko's seat is vulnerable yet again. John Kakko and Dana Balter are tied neck and neck in the polls. Citrus TV reporter Greg Bradbury is over at the Embassy Suites on Hiawatha Boulevard near Destiny, USA. The County Republican Party is hosting a small event with candidates and media. Greg, how's it going right now?
Yeah, guys, you can see it's definitely a very different scene than we've seen in elections past. You can see behind me socially distanced chairs. Right now we're in a room where just the media is going to be. As for everybody else in the GOP, they're in their own separate rooms upstairs in kind of a war room setting where they'll be going back and forth and watching the numbers come in, as we'll be watching the numbers come in as well. In terms of what we can expect for the rest of the night, we're not quite sure when we'll be able to talk to people. They might come down, they might not. Once again, that really depends on the numbers and when they come in. But once the polls close at 9 o'clock, we'll get a good look at some of the early voting numbers that are coming in. And then later on, we'll be keeping an eye on the people who voted today. But that's all I got for now. We'll keep you updated here at the GOP headquarters. For now, reporting live, I'm Greg Bradbury, Citrus TV News.
Coming up next on Citrus TV, student athletes at Syracuse University are working to increase voter registration among their fellow students. We'll show you how this impacts the student vote here in Syracuse.
And the Electoral College is how America decides election results. Our Liam Crowley is in studio to break down one of the oldest systems of American democracy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. they're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? You don't know much. Knowing your breasts can save your life.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Back to Citrus TV's election coverage. Students in Syracuse vote mostly by mail-in and absentee ballots. Our reporter Josh Myers spoke with students on campus about the issues they face when casting their ballots.
Thanks, guys. The election is just right around the corner, and students are being faced with the challenging task of getting their vote in by mail. The student population will play a major role in determining this year's election, so I spoke to some SU students to ask them what their biggest challenges are to vote during a year like no other.
I don't know. I think it was just a little difficult, recognizing what I could and couldn't do. And
it is a first for many students at Syracuse University.
I had difficulty with applying for a mail-in ballot. I accidentally applied twice.
The campus community finding it more difficult than ever to get their voices heard in this year's election. First-time voters must now vote in one of the strangest elections in American history, one during a year of a global pandemic.
It's definitely not as easy as it could have been in a regular year.
It's just slow. The post office is slow.
Mail-in voting is especially difficult for students coming out of state. Many say the process of voting by mail this year was confusing.
A little bit of confusion, a little bit of a calling to my local election office.
Figuring out how to get my ballot was just a little confusing.
The voting process this year wasn't challenging for everyone. Some students say it was only a matter of filling out their ballot and sending it back in.
I haven't really faced any challenges in voting this year. I think it's a pretty simple system.
It took a little bit longer than I expected to get here, but after that it was pretty fun.
And it certainly reflects on the larger student body. After polling 143 students 1 week before the election, 92% said that they had already sent out their ballots. First-time voters say they believe this unprecedented election will inspire young voters to get their voices out.
Students and young people have a really vigilant, activist mindset that they realize that it's really important to vote this election.
Whether voting in person or by mail, all students seem to have the same mindset: to go out and vote. In Syracuse, Josh Myers, Citrus TV News.
Thanks, Josh. 3 Syracuse University athletes have ramped up efforts to encourage other athletes at the school to vote. Project 444 is an initiative aimed towards educating and registering multiple Syracuse University athletics teams to vote. Here to tell us more about this historic moment is Citrus TV's Yaban Su.
Some young people say their vote doesn't matter. Others say the election is not something to waste their time on. But for 3 athletes here at Syracuse University, they are looking to shift that narrative within the athletics department in ways that the school has never seen before.
Voter suppression has even kind of evolved since then into how we see it now.
This election season, 3 athletes are changing the way Syracuse University athletics approaches voting. Kaylee Jones, Lila Nazarian, and AJ Walker have founded Project 444, an initiative to raise awareness and register SU athletes to vote.
So we started outlining it. Basically, the 3 phases that we developed start with voter education, right? So we start with basic information about how the voting process works, and then we move into engagement kind of pieces where we talk about, how voting affects the other parts of our life and why, therefore, it's important to vote.
The initiative started with a Black-Orange seminar.
It allowed student athletes to see perspectives of people who have been in their shoes, who have had the same experiences they do, who come from many of the same places. And to really kind of have a perspective from, people who have been student athletes at Syracuse.
They then hosted a voter dialogue training session.
Community mindset, it's incredibly powerful because it gives us a deeper understanding of your own identities and then how they change throughout time. It connects us to others because we all don't have the same identities, which is a good thing. If we all had the same identities, then life would be incredibly boring. And then our personal desires are linked to all of our communities.
The athletes wrapped it all up with a voter suppression workshop.
Made people realize, one, how their own personal background affects their beliefs, morals, and values and the decisions that they make. And 2, it showed people that when you have certain morals and backgrounds, how you judge other people beforehand.
We wanted to make sure that it's empowering for not just this election. So we've created a business plan. We taped everything. We've saved our slabs to hope that they can use that in the future if they'd like to use it. But just instilling that empowerment into student athletes and coaches and whoever else is in the athletic department was important because we hope they vote in local elections in the next few years too.
Project 444 has sparked a movement unlike any other here at Syracuse University. To this day, 10 SU teams are 100% registered to vote, proving that athletes are much more than their product on the field of play, or as they like to say, more than an athlete. Reporting from the Life Sciences Building, I'm Yao Bonsu, CitrusTV News.
Thanks, Yao. And before we get into any more results, before we get into predictions, we're going to be seeing those numbers all night. Let's take a look at the map with our own Anthony Dabbundo. Anthony, what's the most likely path to victory right now for both sides?
Donald Trump is getting exactly the numbers that he wants to get out of the South. We believe that he is on his way to win Florida. We believe that he is ahead in Georgia, but we're still awaiting some votes in Atlanta. And we believe that North Carolina is going to be very close. But the race will then come down to the upper Midwest. As we take a look here in Ohio, Biden is holding a 10-point lead right now with the majority of the early vote already in and Election Day reporting coming in and being tabulated as we speak. We have an estimated 60% of the vote in. Again, we're watching Delaware County, which is the suburb of Columbus, just north of that blue county there. And we're also watching the Mahoning Valley, way up in the northeast. It will give us a big tell of how Pennsylvania may vote, and it will give us a big tell of who will win Ohio. And as we look at my favorite state, the beloved state of Pennsylvania. As we take a look at Pennsylvania, it's one of the most important prizes on the map. Biden up huge here. It's not going to last. He's not going to win Pennsylvania by 80. But why is he up 80 right now? We've gotten early vote reporting out of Montgomery, Chester, and Delaware counties. They are very liberal counties, and they are going huge for Joe Biden. Those are the numbers he needed to get in the suburbs if he wants to hold off the rural red that will come in later on throughout the night. And then, of course, as we take a look really quickly at North Carolina, Biden holding a lead, doing much better at holding off the early vote in North Carolina than he did in Florida. North Carolina will vote closer than Florida this year. Why? There's just not that Hispanic vote that Trump was able to get in Florida and North Carolina. We're still waiting on some results, but we do have 80% in. So North Carolina going to be very close coming down to the wire.
All right, Anthony, thank you. Pennsylvania, like you mentioned, is one of the most important prizes for either candidate. The state has been the center of lawsuits by President Trump's campaign over the last 2 months concerning mail-in voting, but those lawsuits were just thrown out by a federal judge.
Talking Points analyst Oscar Offerman joins us to discuss the controversies going on in the state and how either Trump or Biden can win the state. So, Oscar, mail-in voting, obviously so important in this election cycle. What's the latest on mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, and how's that going to affect this election?
So you mentioned that those lawsuits were thrown out by the Trump administration, but the Trump administration has vowed to continue pursuing legal action in mail-in voting after the election. Now, the concern among mail-in voting is when those votes are able to still be counted. Now, in Pennsylvania, the rule is that up to 3 days after the election, as long as it's postmarked by Election Day, the vote will count. But the Trump administration has vowed to fight that.
So, sticking to Pennsylvania, and specifically one of the most important areas of the state, Philadelphia, it's recently been rocked by recent events of the police shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. there. How do you think that and the protests that followed will impact the vote in Philadelphia, which is the highest voting center in the state?
So I would watch out for two things in terms of the protest. Obviously, the protest started after the shooting of a black man in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood of the city. So I would watch for two things. I would watch the urban vote in urban Philadelphia, and I would also watch the suburban vote, specifically in Bucks County, which traditionally is very swingy. So I would watch those two areas.
Now, Oscar, one of the most controversial issues in this campaign, at least over in that region of the country, is fracking. Joe Biden seems to have been on multiple different sides of this issue throughout this campaign. What has he said about fracking?
Yeah, there's really a discrepancy between what Biden says about fracking in Pennsylvania and what he says in the rest of the country. In Pennsylvania, he tries to toe the line because fracking is a huge issue in the state. He doesn't say he supports it or doesn't support it. He tries to toe that line. With the rest of the country, he's much more sympathetic to the anti-fracking movement, and we've seen that discrepancy throughout the campaign.
So the polls have been closed in Pennsylvania. We're obviously, because of all these mail-in voting things, are not going to know these results for quite some time. But what are we seeing right now with the tallies we do have in?
So as Anthony just mentioned, we're seeing a lot of early votes in Philadelphia. I believe Biden has a 90-10 advantage. Also in Montgomery County, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, Biden has a huge advantage there. What is yet to come in is Bucks County. Now that's going to be huge because that county, as I mentioned earlier, is very swingy, and it could determine who wins the suburbs, Biden or Trump.
So, Oscar, I hate to put you on the spot here, but that's what I'm going to do. What do President Trump and Biden have to do to win this state, and who do you think is going to win Pennsylvania?
So Trump really has to increase turnout in the middle part of the state, the part of the state that really votes red. Biden has to depend on heavy turnout in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Erie, Pennsylvania, which went for Trump in 2016. I don't think it's going to go for Trump this time around.
All right, Oscar Offerman, thank you. The Electoral College is what decides the presidency every 4 years. Here to break down everything you need to know about the system is Citrus TV correspondent Liam Crowley.
Thanks, guys. Popular votes, swing states, and electors, oh my. The Electoral College has been a polarizing topic for decades due to how many perceive it to be an inaccurate representation of their votes. The reason being that when you cast your ballot this November 3rd, you're not exactly voting for the president, but actually for a representative of that candidate's party, known as an elector. There are a total of 538 electors who then go on to vote for the president on behalf of the people from that state. So 538 electoral votes across 50 states. That comes out to be about 11 per state, right? Well, not exactly. Each state is assigned a number of electoral votes based on the number of congressional districts they have, and are then given 2 additional votes that reflect the state's Senate seats. 3 more electoral votes go to the District of Columbia and Washington, D.C., and the magic number every election year is 270, as once either candidate hits that many electoral votes, they clinch a victory. Another important thing to note, the Electoral College is mostly a winner-takes-all system. Whichever candidate has the higher number of total votes in that state receives all of that state's electoral votes, with only Maine and Nebraska going proportionally by district. Think back to 2000, where George Bush and Al Gore had a photo finish in the state of Florida. Gore was originally announced as the winner in the Sunshine State, but upon a recount, it appeared that Bush was the victor by just 327 votes. Florida is one of a few swing states, which are states that do not necessarily follow a traditional pattern of voting and could end up either red or blue on election night. Bush's victory in a key swing state was able to clinch him the presidency despite losing the popular vote. That's another key, the popular vote. Twice in American history, a candidate has won the popular vote but lost the election. How can that be? Well, remember what I said about the Electoral College being mostly a winner-takes-all system? That applies to 48 of the 50 states, whether a candidate wins by 1 vote or 1 million votes. Come election night, Biden could take in 90% of traditionally blue states' votes, while Trump beats Biden in key swing states by small margins. This could lead to a Trump victory with a popular vote loss, the same thing that happened to the current president in 2016. I've spoken so much about swing states, so let's talk about the ones to look out for. There are 6 key swing states in this election, those being Pennsylvania, Arizona, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and Wisconsin. There are a total of 124 electoral votes up for grabs in those 6 states combined, a boost that both Trump and Biden will desperately need tonight. In recent close elections, Florida decided the president in 2000, while Pennsylvania decided the president in 2016. While there's a lot of variables to wrap your head around, there are two key things you should focus on this election night. Those 6 swing states I just mentioned, and the magic number of 270. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Liam. And coming up, Congressman Anthony Brindisi is preparing for round 2 with Republican Claudia Tenney in New York's 22nd District. Mariah Humiston will be in studio to break down what to watch for.
And Dana Balter details how she's reaching out to the student vote this election cycle in an exclusive interview with CitrusTV. Don't go anywhere.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
Welcome back to Citrus TV News' 2020 election special. New York's 22nd congressional district race is once again between incumbent Anthony Brindisi and former Congresswoman Claudia Tenney.
In 2018, the race between the two came down to a margin of less than 4,500 votes. Here to break down key issues for voters this year is Citrus TV analyst Mariah Humiston.
Thanks, guys. Starting off, the 22nd District covers all of Shenango, Cortland, Madison, and Oneida counties, and key cities for this district's race are Rome, Utica, Cortland, and Binghamton. Now, one of the key issues voters are concerned about is the cable and internet provider spectrum, which has locked the market for service providers in this district and increased rates, leaving people in the 22nd District with no other option for a service provider. Now, this was an issue brought up in the 2018 election as well, and both campaigns have addressed spectrum in their political advertisements this year. Claudia Tenney says her solution would be to break up the virtual monopoly Spectrum has on internet service around the state. She believes that Anthony Brindisi is not following through on his 2018 campaign promises to hold the company accountable. Now, Brindisi says that the FCC needs to place more regulations on Charter Communications, who owns Spectrum, so Spectrum cannot impose data caps and charge more for internet service. Now, other issues the candidates have discussed are police reform, election security, and COVID-19. But again, the main issue voters in the district are concerned about is the future of Spectrum as a service provider and are deciding which candidate will hold the company accountable after the election.
Thanks, Mariah. It's 9 p.m. and that means polls across the state are starting to close, but it will still be a while before we get any results here in Syracuse. We have Katie Lane back at Huntington Hall once again. Katie, what have you seen there? Are there any students still there getting ready to vote?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, the last few voters are trickling out right now as the poll has officially closed here at Huntington Hall. They even took in the vote here sign behind me, but it was a revolving door of students today overall. Voting did get off to a little bit of a late start after a machine malfunctioned, but it was fixed almost immediately and students were able to get voting 6 feet apart. Citrus TV spoke to some election inspectors, and they were able to explain how voting was a little different this year due to COVID-19.
Like personally, this is the first time I've ever voted early. I went to vote early, and there were hundreds of people in line. And as you can see here at the moment, it's quite quiet. Partially COVID, because all the ones that are out on campus. And they're also making people afraid to go out for fear they're going to catch something. And so in that respect, it's very different. In past times of COVID, it's only different in that people are more spread apart. There are not clumps of people who know each other, who, hey, how you doing? And chat. But you have something and everybody's in masks.
It made it more accessible for us, for more volunteers to get around to it. I mean, it's been a nice environment. People seem to be happy. It's great to be able to vote.
I want to make a difference, but to make sure that everybody else will see that I'm trying to make a difference for everybody in voting.
It certainly was a busy day.
Thanks, Katie. We're going to get back to her later on in the show. But before we get to anything else, we're going to look at some results and predictions across the country. Now, 2 of the big states that we're looking at right now are Georgia and Texas. We've got some big results coming in there. We've also got results across North Carolina. Now, Brandon, we're really seeing a rapid change from what we saw just about an hour ago when we started this show. It looks like the margins are tightening across the South right now.
I mean, this is not surprising as more and more of these election day votes begin to get counted, obviously largely expected to favor Republicans. So North Carolina, which was previously Biden plus about 7 or 8 by the time we were getting on the air, around now what we're looking at is that it's about a 4-point advantage for Biden, and then things are really tightening up in Texas. It's now within 1 percentage point with 65% in. Really the only chance that Biden has left there in Texas, if that figure holds, is he has to really run up every single remaining vote in both the county that holds Houston and Dallas. Those are going to be his money makers where he gets those ballots in. And then Ohio right now, that's also starting to tighten a lot with 55% of the vote in, 6-point margin in favor of Biden, which is still boding well, but it can still go either way. And now we're joined by Anthony Dabbundo to break down a little bit more about these results. So, Anthony, looking at these things, it's looking like Trump's getting a late bump here.
Yeah, this is one of the most, this is, for election night reporting, the most unique night that we've ever had. And so, sitting over there in our little decision desk room, it's hard to know exactly what the election day vote is going to turn out, because what we've seen so far in Ohio and Pennsylvania is the Democrats are running up these huge numbers, especially in the suburbs, but we just don't know how long they're going to hold. And we're seeing it in Ohio right now, where Biden has a huge lead, and then slowly it's starting to dwindle down. I would think I'd rather be Donald Trump in Ohio right now than Joe Biden. It's so early, and there's still a lot of Cleveland and Columbus and the suburbs out, but it's going to be really tricky there. And then in Pennsylvania, we're seeing some good numbers out of Joe Biden in the rurals, where he's running a little bit ahead. But again, we still have to wait for more election day vote. And in Michigan, right now, Trump is actually ahead by 20 points, but they're not counting the mails yet. They're only counting the election day vote. So a lot still to be decided in the Midwest.
Thank you. Again, the Michigan Secretary of State also added earlier tonight that those results should come in earlier than expected. Here in New York's 24th, though, Dana Balter is trying for a second time to unseat Congressman John Katko. Our own Ricky Sayer got the chance to sit down with her before tonight, and he joins us live right now. Ricky, what's her message that she's been trying to send to students?
Her message is that usually students and young people in general don't vote in elections. She's hoping that changes because she says students and young people can make a difference. They can be the deciding factor in elections. Now, right now, we are standing here outside of Maxwell Hall at Syracuse University, where just a few years ago, Dana Balter was teaching classes in the political science department, just like any other professor. Now, she did receive criticism from John Katko in those ads, calling her a visiting assistant teaching professor. And we also know that she's come here to speak multiple times, and we asked her about students that impact college students.
Let's talk now about issues very important to college students, namely the price of college. We'll split this both into private schools and public schools. SU's total cost of attendance, $77,500. That's about where it's at. In terms of private schools, do you believe that's a fair price to pay? And do you think that price should be brought down? And should Congress be doing anything about that? Or should they only be focusing on public schools?
Listen, college affordability is a huge problem. And it is a problem for students who are thinking about going to school. It is also a major problem for students who have already gone to school and are carrying massive loads of debt. And we have to address both sides of that. We have to address the student debt crisis. If we let it go unchecked, it will collapse our economy. We have to address the issue of college affordability. So we've got to expand federal aid opportunities for kids going to any kind of school, whether it's public or private. We need to have tuition-free options in our public schools and in community colleges. We should make sure that everybody who wants a college education at whatever kind of school they want to go to can do it without taking on massive amounts of debt. And absolutely there is a place for Congress in that fight.
Right now, many SU classes and classes for many students across the country are online. Do you think that the tuition should be less for college students right now, and again, both for private and public?
I think if what we should be focused on is making sure that colleges and universities have the tools they need to deliver the same quality of education remotely that they do in person. And we need to hold them to those standards. Obviously, students should not be paying room and board fees that they're not using, but they're getting, assuming their schools are doing a good job, they're getting a full education, whether they do that remotely or not.
I'm sure you followed Nottingham SU and what's happened after that. Do you believe the university has gone far enough to meet those demands?
I don't think so. I don't think there is such a thing as getting far enough or getting to the end of that effort. When we're talking about issues of racial justice, that is an everlasting project. And it's something that we should expect our leaders to be working on continually.
Another issue is housing. It's tough for students right now to pay for housing. There are eviction moratoriums going on right now that are set to lapse in not the far future. How far should they be extended?
So this is one of the things that is so important in Congress right now is the COVID relief effort. And Congressman Katko HEROES Act. It includes moratoriums on evictions and on foreclosures for people who own their homes. We have to extend that kind of support, not to some arbitrary date on the calendar, but to economic indicators. We need to make sure people have those protections until they're back to work, until the economy is back on its feet and they can afford to make their rent on the first of every month.
To wrap things up, I want to talk about health care for just a moment and how the Affordable Care Act could impact students if the Supreme Court strikes it down. If that does happen, would you support a standalone bill that would extend the age that students or anyone can stay on their parents' health insurance to 26, or for pre-existing conditions to ensure that if someone has a pre-existing condition, that doesn't impact them in getting health insurance, as well as in terms of sex discrimination in the housing, in the healthcare market?
Listen, I support all of the things that you just mentioned and a lot more. As you know, one of my top issues is making sure everybody gets access to health care. If the ACA strikes down, if the Supreme Court strikes down the ACA, which may very well happen, I am going to be working in Congress to reconstitute the entire ACA. We'll deal with whatever the Supreme Court uses as justification to strike it down, but we've got to get the whole thing back up and running because tens of millions of people depend on it for their insurance. I support all of the things that you mentioned and many more, and I will work as hard as I possibly can on every single piece of the healthcare problem to make sure that everybody's got the coverage they need. My absolute commitment is to ensure that no one has to forego care, that no one has to go without filling a prescription because they can't afford it, and that we never, ever abandon people with pre-existing conditions.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about any legislation that you're in support of that may impact college students, such as marijuana or any other type of issue that you'd like to get across?
Well, I think there are a million things that we can talk about. I think the climate crisis is one of the most important, and in order to address this challenge, we need real, bold action, and that means everything from investing in renewable energy, infrastructure, and research and development, to modernizing the grid, to changing the way we do public transit, to promoting sustainable agriculture for farmers. It's going to be a top priority in Congress because we care about the world that we're leaving to the next generation.
Great stuff from our Ricky Sayre. You can see the rest of that on the web if you're so interested. Katko and Bolter are neck and neck in the latest poll. The race is a toss-up. We likely won't have results by the end of the night or even by tomorrow morning. The Onondaga County Elections Board says there are too many absentee and mail-it ballots to really have a good idea of this. We're going to go now live to our Greg Bradbury. He's at the Embassy Suites on Hiawatha Boulevard. Greg, what are you expecting to see?
Yeah, guys, well, the biggest thing that we want to talk about is when those results are going to come in. Now, right now, about 19% of the vote is going to be coming in, and that's from early voting. We saw a number of people vote in Onondaga County. That's that 19%. And right now, within Onondaga County, Dana Bolter has about a 12,000 vote lead over John Katko. But as we move forward into the night, we're going to be seeing a lot of other numbers come in. Around sometime between 10 and 11, we'll probably see the people who voted in on Election Day. Those votes will start coming in. But the thing is, we're probably not going to know who wins tonight unless it becomes a landslide race, which we don't expect. As you mentioned, it is a neck-and-neck race. And the big reason is that is because mail-in voting is going to be coming in later on, and that's going to take a while to come in and kind of take some time in, not just today, but throughout the week. And one of the biggest things is not till Monday when absentee votes begin getting counted. That's Monday the 9th. So a lot of people who voted absentee those things won't be coming in and counted until then. But I'll keep you updated with the latest here as it comes out. Reporting from the GOP headquarters for Citrus TV News, I'm Greg Bradbury.
Thanks, Greg. We'll be hearing from him throughout the night as this progresses. And coming up, Biden and Trump aren't the only candidates on the ballot this year. The Green Party's perennial Howie Hawkins is the pick for the Green Party, and we're going to show you how other parties can impact the ballot this year. We sat down with Hawkins to talk about his battle so far this fall.
And everyone's eyes are on the swing states this election, but it could come down to one congressional district in Maine. I explore why when we come back.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3.
you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back to Citrus TV's election special. We heard from Liam Crowley earlier about the impact of the Electoral College. For the most part, it's standard statewide first past the post, but I sat down with one Democrat in Maine's 2nd Congressional District who explains a quirk with their process that could make a big impact.
Driving to Maine beyond Portland and Augusta, and okay, I'll be blunt, you won't find a lot there. That said, the northern portion of the state could decide a presidential election all on its own.
Maine splits our electoral college votes. So 2 votes are given to the winner of the popular vote in the state, similar to any other state. But for the other 2 votes of the 4 electoral college votes Maine has, it goes to the winner of the 2 different districts from the state. So if you win the 2nd district, you get the 2nd district vote. And if you win the 1st district, you get the 1st district vote.
Berger is in the 2nd district, where he's the vice president of Bates College Democrats. While the 1st district isn't very competitive, historically, the 2nd district has been. It's one that twice elected Barack Obama, but Trump carried it by double digits in 2016. However, Berger explains that changing demographics have begun favoring Democrats.
The largest city within the 2nd district is Lewiston, which over the past couple of years is having a huge revitalization due to a huge influx of Somali refugees, bringing a way more younger and diverse population into the district.
Incumbent House Democrat Jared Golden is expected to comfortably win re-election. However, the presidential vote will likely be much tighter, and Berger expects Trump to raise flags over Maine's ranked choice voting system.
If the race is close in either presidential race or any race really in Maine, there will definitely be some questioning about Maine's election system, because it's completely different than anything else in the country.
So if this election comes down to northern, largely unincorporated Maine, this could take a while.
For the record, we reached out to Republicans in Maine as well. All declined to comment or did not get back to us. A quick update on results before we move along. Right now, states that have been called for Trump over the last hour or so: North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Wyoming, all now officially in Camp Trump. And for Joe Biden, the polls have closed and he has received votes from New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Mexico. Current electoral count: 119 Biden, 93 Trump. And going from there, one of the states that really is going to make the biggest impact through all of this is Florida. And we saw some of those results come in earlier. Right now, looking good for Trump, but over the last hour or so, results have completely stopped coming in.
Absolutely. Now, Florida, we can't call this just yet. We'll likely have that for you later in the night. But Florida is going to be a really uphill battle for Biden. So the areas where we have to see a little bit more reporting of the panhandle, those are areas that we expected to be extremely strong for President Trump. Looks like there's not going to be too many surprises in store for Florida. Now, to get into Florida, Florida is very different from a lot of the states in the electorate. It's different from a lot of the states in the South, and there's a couple reasons why that's true. Number one, Florida has a big Hispanic population, but it has a Hispanic population that is substantively different from the ones that we see even in states like Texas, Pennsylvania, New York. The reason for that is because Florida has a massive proportion of Hispanic voters who were actually born in another country, right? And what that means is that they pay attention to the politics in their home country more than, say, a third-generation Mexican-American does from Texas, right? Yep. So over the last year and a half, the thing that we've seen over and over again is there's been a lot of upheaval in Latin America. We saw almost complete collapse in Venezuela, and that has been a huge message for voters in Florida. When Republicans talk about socialism in Florida, it's not something that's seen as falling on deaf ears. It's a message that really resonates with those Hispanics in Florida. Especially those, again, like in the aftermath of Fidel Castro taking over, a bunch of Cubans fled to Florida. They make up a large chunk of that Latino population, but now also some Puerto Ricans getting caught up in this, even Venezuelans. And they get this message and they really kind of take it to heart. And moving on from there, one of the other things we need to focus on is we got Biden and Trump, but there are other candidates on the ballot too. Anthony Dabbundo has more about that.
The third-party impact on the 2020 election may be smaller than 2016, but it's still important enough to watch. Benjamin Schiller is here with the details.
Libertarian presidential candidate Joe Jorgensen is traveling around the nation to take votes away from President Donald Trump. In 2016, Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson won less than 3% of the vote in battleground states. This year, Jorgensen is polling above 3% nationally in last weekend's polls. With states like Texas and Florida being the key to winning the Electoral College, Jorgensen and other third-party candidates could throw a wrench into Biden and Trump's plans by continuing the campaign in person and digitally in smaller, intimate settings. Green Party candidate and Syracuse native Howie Hawkins is trying to take votes away from Joe Biden. Hawkins is promoting his progressive policies and the Green New Deal. However, he continues to receive less than 1% of the vote in recent polls. Let's not forget about rapper Kanye West, who entered the race on July 4th. West is not on the ballot, but is using social media to sway voters. In an election where every vote matters, these third-party candidates want to make a name for their platforms in hopes of generating interest for their future candidates in local elections for years to come.
Thanks, Ben. Howie Hawkins is a perennial Green Party candidate, but he's making his first bid for the White House this year. Although he knows his chances to clinch the commander-in-chief spot are pretty slim, he's still trying to use his platform to get Green Party issues on the table. Take a listen to hear Howie Hawkins' perspective on 2020's race.
Tell me a little bit about where we are right now.
Well, we're on in a storefront on the south side of Syracuse, and we can afford it because it's a depressed community and the rent isn't too high. And we do our activities out of here. It's been a little different with the COVID pandemic, so we don't have live meetings in here. We've been doing Zoom calls locally.
You've run for elected office 24 times, you've lost 24 times. Why do you think it is then that the people in your party thought you would be the best person to be at the top of the ticket? Is it that name recognition? Is it something else? Why do you think it is?
Well, I think they like the positions I articulate, and they know I can run a large-scale campaign. Our runs for governor didn't win the governorship, but 2014 I got 5% of the vote. That's the most for a third party on the left in 100 years. Governor Cuomo wanted to run up the vote that year to get ready to run for president, get more than his daddy, Mario Cuomo, ever got, get more than he got in 2010 when he was first elected, and he got less, and we're sitting there with 5% of the vote. He couldn't take us for granted. So in his next administration, he adopted a number of policies he had never supported before that we were demanding. A ban on fracking, $15 minimum wage, paid family leave, extending the millionaire's tax. So you don't have to win the office to move the debate and get some changes.
You've said you're a stronger anti-Trump vote than Joe Biden is. What does that mean?
It means for progressives who want Medicare for all, who want a Green New Deal, who want to get out of these endless wars, I'm for those things. Biden as well as Trump are opposed to them. So if you're a progressive, particularly in New York where Biden's ahead by 30 points, he's going to win New York. Don't waste your vote. Vote for what you want and make the political system come to you. And help the Green Party maintain its ballot line. We need nearly 200,000 votes just to stay on the ballot.
I think you know the frequent criticism of the Green Party, as well as third-party candidates in general, has been that they can become spoiler candidates. I know that in 2016 you had races, I think there was at least 1 or 2 races across the country where the number of Green Party votes was more than the number of votes where the difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in races that Donald Trump ultimately won. What is your response to people who say that the Green Party and third-party candidates in general are spoiler candidates?
No, we improve elections. We don't spoil elections. You go to 2016, exit polls showed that 61% of our candidate, Jill Stein's voters, would have stayed home if she was not on the ballot. So that wouldn't have made any difference in Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania if she was not on the ballot.
So you're saying your voters are disenfranchised enough that they wouldn't vote for either Donald Trump or Joe Biden in this election if you weren't running?
Most of them,
if there was no Green.
That's correct. The assumption that our people are wayward Democrats by the Democratic Party is wrong. Most of our people, they're disgusted with both major parties. They want an alternative.
I believe you're polling at less than 1%. You're only on the ballot in
30 states. Are you actually running to win this election?
No, it's not. I can't win the White House this election, but we're winning to get ballot lines so we can run local candidates in the upcoming election cycle. The way we're going to become a major party and force in American politics is building from the bottom up.
Do you believe that getting Donald Trump out of office is one of the top issues, top ideas, top things that are important to you right now?
It's important to me, but even more important is we get real solutions to life or death issues we face. The climate meltdown. Trump acts as if it's a hoax. I mean, he says it's a hoax, but Biden acts as if it's a hoax. Biden is pro-fossil fuels, he's pro-nuclear power, and to the extent he does things on renewables, it's token.
But I do want to wrap up that conversation by asking you what I'm sure you've heard from Democrats, which is, why don't you tell your supporters to vote for Joe Biden? Is it for that single issue that Joe Biden won't solve what you need, what you believe should be solved right now?
Yeah, we got to build an alternative to the two-party corporate state. We need a People's Party. And we can't wait 4 years. We're running out of time.
Do you believe that the Green New Deal has been co-opted in ways that you don't like by the AOCs, Bernie Sanders of the world?
Yeah, well, I don't hold Bernie so responsible, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you know, the original demand in that sit-in in Pelosi's office was a select committee for a Green New Deal, which would allow them to put legislation directly on the Senate floor. And Nancy Pelosi wasn't having that, so AOC came back with Ed Markey, the senator, with a non-binding resolution for a Green New Deal. They took the slogan and diluted it of its key content. They eliminated the ban on fracking and new fossil fuel infrastructure, the phase out of nuclear power, the cuts to the Pentagon budget to help pay for it, and they extended the deadline from 2030 to 2050.
I know you want to either build or take over a quarter of manufacturing in the U.S. How exactly would that work, and how would the government pay for that?
Well, like we did during World War II, when the War Production Board took over or built a quarter of the manufacturing capacity in order to turn industry on a dime very rapidly into the arsenal of democracy, so we could arm the Allies against Hitler and Tojo and Mussolini. We got to do that kind of program now to defeat climate change.
What are you looking for on election night? What will make you happy?
If we get enough votes to keep the ballot line in New York, I'll be very happy. That's going to be tough for us. It's just, you know, Trump has dominated everybody's consciousness. He tweets, everybody gets mad, or everybody who's at all progressive gets mad. So they're just reacting to Trump. So we're kind of off the, you know, that narrative. We're out here on the left saying, you know, we got real problems and we got real solutions to offer, and we need your votes. But most people just are focused on Trump. So.
Thanks, Ricky. Great stuff as always. And now we're going to check in with our analysts and researchers over in Watson Theater. Polls are just starting to close across some of those Midwestern states. Our team is watching key races across the country. We've got Manny Martinez right now in Watson Theater. Manny, what are you seeing right now?
Here in Watson Auditorium. We're actually not too far from our studios. We're just across the hall, but the pandemic has forced us to distance in here, and unfortunately we couldn't all fit in the newsroom, so here we are in the auditorium. But we're still working just as hard to give you the same experience at home that you would be getting any other year. And behind me, what you see are the researchers and analysts that will scour all places to get you the latest polling results and the latest numbers and any state calls that come in. You can hear them screaming behind me. As the process happens, the numbers come in here. We get them here, and then we relay them to the control room, and then they end up on your television screens. And we'll be doing this all night long as long as there are numbers to call, and it looks like that'll be continuing on up until midnight tonight. So it's going to be busy. We're going to be experimenting in here. This is something that we've never done before, and we will see how this works, and we'll move around. We'll talk to the analysts. We'll talk to the researchers. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Manny. And now we can say that Joe Biden is going to take the state of Colorado, potentially some more on that later. But now the traditionally Democratic stronghold of Minnesota is a battleground state in 2020. It's one of those key Midwestern states. The state's been at the forefront of events over the last 6 months.
The state's the epicenter for protests against racism and police brutality after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis back in May. CitrusTV analyst Oscar Offerman joins us to discuss how these events could influence the results in the state. So let's start with centered around that George Floyd thing you mentioned. How can both candidates appeal to voters after the aftermath of the death of George Floyd and the protests that followed in the weeks and months after?
Campaigned on different things. Trump campaigned on more of a law and order stance, and he won the endorsement of a lot of police unions across the country. Biden ran more on a police reform campaign, and that is likely to help him in the city of Minneapolis. It remains to be seen what's going to happen in the surrounding suburbs.
Now, Oscar, moving over to some other issues, there's a legal controversy going on right now in the 2nd Congressional District. Get me up to speed on that.
So what happened was a few months ago, a third-party candidate died. He was actually for the Legalize Marijuana Now party, and Minnesota state law had that they were classified as a major party because they gained more than 5% of the vote in 2018. And Minnesota state law also stipulated that if a major party candidate died, then the election was supposed to be delayed. Now, the election was originally delayed over to February, but that was struck down by the Minnesota Supreme Court.
So looking at what we're at right now, that's obviously the situation with the presidential race and one of the big congressional races in there. Let's talk about the Senate race. You've got Tina Smith, who was appointed after Al Franken resigned from the Senate. She won her special election back in 2018. She's up for her full regular election for the first time, this against former Congressman Jason Lewis. What's it looking like there right now?
So Smith is running within 5 points. She's actually ahead by within 5 points of Jason Lewis, and that race has really, as you mentioned, Tina Smith served out the remainder of Al Franken's term after winning a special election 2 years ago. She is looking to win her first full term as senator, and that race is really looking tight, just like the presidential races.
Now, Oscar, results are beginning to trickle in Minnesota. What are you seeing right now, and what is your prediction for the state overall?
So as you mentioned, early votes are starting to come in Minnesota, mostly in Minneapolis. Those votes are skewing heavily for Biden. He's actually outpacing what Hillary Clinton was able to do in Minneapolis in 2016. And I see Biden carrying the state. A Republican has not been able to win Minnesota since 1972, and I don't see that stopping now. Biden and Senator Tina Smith should win close races in the state.
All right, Oscar Offerman, thank you.
And 4 years ago, Trump won Ohio by a large margin, and in the past few elections, the state has voted red.
But this year, a Trump victory in Ohio is not guaranteed. Here with the latest update on those numbers we've been talking about all night is CitrusTV correspondent Natalie Fahmy. So again, first thing is those numbers. They were looking very tight, but favoring Biden. What do we know right now?
The numbers are just getting tighter and tighter. Right now, 64% of votes are reported, and Biden is just winning by 0.3%. So it is quite the toss-up right now.
It's something we're going to be watching all night, Natalie. So, Natalie, how important is Ohio in this year's election, and how is what we see in Ohio mirrored across the country?
Ohio is going to be really important in this year's election for a few reasons. First off, Ohio is going to Pennsylvania is going to mirror a lot of what Ohio does. Those two states generally vote somewhat similarly, so the way Ohio swings might end up being the way Pennsylvania swings. More than that, Ohio usually dictates the outcome of the election. Only one time since 1944 that was not true, so usually the winner of Ohio wins the presidential election overall.
And of course, we won't know Pennsylvania for quite some time due to all the ballot issues there. So what is the expected outcome as the state continues counting votes right now, and it's continuing to trickle in, and it's just getting oh so closer between these two?
And that's the problem. It keeps on getting closer. It's really hard to tell right now. It's quite the toss-up. We'll know more as the night progresses, but it looks like a lot of counties in Ohio are leaning red at the moment. Biden is leading some counties with a pretty large margin, but Trump is leading counties with a margin just as large.
All right, Natalie Fahmy with the latest on Ohio. Thank you.
And coming up next, social media plays a big part in tonight's election. We're going to show you how one student is using Instagram to influence students on campus.
And we have the latest projections for Iowa. We'll show you how Biden and Trump are facing off for votes from the Hawkeye State.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Boom. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Boom. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Boom. Yeah.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Citrus TV News live election night coverage. We're an hour in and we'll be staying with you till midnight.
For now, we're going to check in on one of the most competitive local races here in central New York. The battle for New York 24 is on. Most polls have showed John Katko and Dana Bolter neck and neck. This is a race that is likely going to take days to be counted. Now, as you can see, because of the social distancing, it's a subdued event over at the Embassy Suites in Syracuse. But Greg, what is the atmosphere tonight? What are you seeing as we start to trickle in results?
Hey guys, well right now the vote is just starting to come in. We've got about 4% reporting here in the 24th Congressional District, and right now Dana Bolter has a slight lead over John Katko, just about 1,000 votes, so obviously we expect a lot to change over the night, but right now the mood here is, it's pretty empty. We've just been in this room with the rest of the press. We've had a couple people from the GOP party come down throughout the night and talk to them, but we have no sign of John Katko. We'll definitely keep you updated with that as it comes out and the latest numbers as well. And anyone we'll be able to talk to, we'll make sure to bring that with you as well as the latest comes out here and who we get to talk to. But yeah, for now, we're live here and we will be checking in with you when we come back. See you guys.
All right, Greg, thank you. And we're going to check in on some results right now. No new states to call. The Electoral College margin still 133 to 92 in favor of former Vice President Joe Biden. Taking a look at North Carolina really quickly before we get to Anthony Dabbundo. At the moment, 80% of the vote is in. Joe Biden and the Democratic Senate candidate, Cal Cunningham, running dead even at the moment, both with 1.5-point leads.
It's one of those things we're going to be watching throughout the night, and the down ballot effect on these Senate races is going to be huge. North Carolina is one of the states where that looks like it's going to be one of the closer mirror images. There's states where that's going to be less true. Looks like North Carolina is not going to be one of those. All
right, we'll be interested to see how that all pans out when those final votes are tallied. But right now we got Anthony Dabbundo at the wall to tell us a little bit more about what the map is looking like outside of just North Carolina.
Well, actually, we're going to start with North Carolina, Brandon. Biden, 49.7. Trump, 49.2. How much of the vote is left? Not much, 97%. Now, we don't know where that 97% is, and again, that is an estimation. I believe there might be a little bit more than that out because the turnout numbers across the country are way up. So North Carolina is going to be really close. But when we look at Ohio, Biden clinging to a 1% lead, but only 80% out. And as we've seen the election day votes come in, Biden's numbers have gotten worse and worse. In Ohio, it's looking like Trump will hold Ohio from 2016, but it's a little early. We still need to wait for some more votes out of Cuyahoga County, Cleveland. They're still counting there. It might take a while. So Ohio is going to be closer than it looked like it was in 2016. And of course, Pennsylvania. I'm growing more and more skeptical that we will have a result in Pennsylvania tonight because all of these counties have different ways they're counting ballots. In the Southeast, they've already done vote by mail, but they haven't done election day. In the Northeast, they've already done election day, they haven't done vote by mail. So we have no idea what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. They still have millions of ballots to count. So it's going to be a while in Pennsylvania, which we believe is the tipping point and deciding state. So that race remains up in the air. But this sounds a lot like 2016 so far, with Trump taking a lot of these swing states by narrow margins.
Anthony said it right there, and the thing that we were looking at early on in this night is how are Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, and Ohio going to look? And if Trump sees promising signs in those states, it's going to be a long night. Now, you talk about Pennsylvania, that looks like it's going to be the state that decides this election one way or another. And if Pennsylvania is not going to be in, we are probably not going to know who the winner of this election is for some time now. That's a big concern.
And it'll be interesting to see. Like, again, I think we all knew going into tonight, especially with all the legal issues with Pennsylvania's voting, the odds of an election night call were very slim. But I think we could very much see some signs towards the end of the night. And right now we got our reporter Ricky Sayer live out in the field. He's working to gauge what the student reaction is so far. Ricky, in the age of the pandemic, how are people watching these results come in?
Yeah, students are watching this election in small groups. We're right now on South Campus in an apartment, a group of 5 students here watching this election on television. We're here with Olivia Troilo, who is with Students for Biden, the group on campus. Tell us a little bit about how you're feeling right now.
A lot of nerves, right? I think like we've all put in a lot of time phone banking, getting voters registered to vote and stuff like that. So just kind of seeing like where our efforts are making an impact. It's a little nerve-wracking.
But it looks like it's going well so far?
It's going okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too optimistic and then get disappointed later. But yeah, it's going pretty well.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Brandon, Michael, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ricky. And in September, Joe Biden and Donald Trump were tied at 47% in Iowa, and now President Trump has taken the polling lead in the state. CitrusTV's Mariah Huston joins us right now to discuss how President Trump moved in front and if Joe Biden can make a comeback in the Hawkeye state. So, obviously, some results aren't going to come in for a bit. Polls haven't closed there yet in Iowa, but what are those polls before election night showing for the presidential election in that state?
Thanks, Brendan. So like you said, Iowa polls will not close until 10 p.m. tonight. However, polls before the election were saying that Trump is going to have a 7-point lead in Iowa, breaking that tie with Joe Biden from back in September. Now, right now, voters are waiting until the polls are closing at 10 to get any results back from Iowa yet.
Now, Mariah, what issues are voters focused on in Iowa this election cycle?
So voters in Iowa right now are focused on job loss and the economy. Now, Iowa lost lots of jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic, but right now they've gained about 60% of those jobs back. Now, their unemployment rate is currently sitting at 4.6%, which is the 5th lowest in the country. So voters are looking to get the rest of the jobs in Iowa back, as well as stay at a low unemployment rate.
That'll be a big impact on the presidential race, but also the Senate race there in Iowa, one of the closest in the country. Incumbent Republican Senator Joni Ernst trying to hold off Teresa Greenfield. What are we seeing there right now?
So Greenfield was leading for a large portion of time until just recently when Joni Ernst took the lead. So right now we're seeing very similar to the presidential election, the Republican incumbent is leading the Senate race in Iowa.
Now, Mariah, can you give me a quick prediction for the presidency and the Senate here?
Sure, Michael. I think that both of them are going to be the Republican incumbents. The presidential election should be going to President Donald Trump again in Iowa, similar to 2016, and Joni Ernst will most likely be taking the Senate seat again.
Mariah Humiston, thank you. We'll hear from you again later on in the show. Social media is going to play a major part in this year's election, and a group of users called nano-influencers are set to be a large part of that.
They've been a huge part in educating their followers this election season. CitrusTV reporter Nicole Aponte explains. Nicole?
Thanks, Brandon and Michael. Now, you've probably heard of the term influencer. You know those people who have over 1 million followers on social media and make a lot of money off of their posts? However, in this year's election, it'll be the nano-influencers who'll be doing the persuading. This term refers to anyone who has a following of anywhere from 100 to 10,000 followers. They post their beliefs, values, and views on their social media platforms. The nano-influencers' lack of fame allows them to develop a personal relationship with their following. I sat down with veteran nano-influencer Bruno Gonzalez-Hauger, who believes the power is in the people's hands this election day.
Social media has influenced this election because it's focused on more like younger people.
There's a lot of places where they post the link to register to vote.
Social media apps like TikTok have been really great about raising awareness about the importance of voting.
I think especially for young voters who are on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, a lot of the news that they get is from social media.
With social media being a source of information for many, it could have the power to determine the outcome of the 2020 election. Voters rely on nano-influencers, people who have a following of 100 to 10,000 on any social media platform. Nano-influencers have the power to build the trust on their feed in order to impact their followers. CitrusTV spoke with Bruno Gonzalez-Hauger, who has used nano-influencing at the core of his company, Ambassador Technology.
I started a company called Ambassador Technologies. What we do is we connect small businesses, mostly brick and mortar businesses, to nano-influencers. And we basically make the whole influencing process automatic. So it's like you design an ad campaign like a Facebook ad campaign, but instead of putting out content, you're putting out your offers for people to accept and for nano-influencers to get engaged with your brand.
While his company is based in the business sector, Bruno still believes that nano-influencing can have an effect in this year's election.
I've been a political nano-influencer, not so much so that I'm posting all the time. I would identify myself as a political nano-influencer, but I posted, like many of my peers, on social media, and we, as a company, we focus on smaller business, but anybody can use the platform.
Now, if what Bruno says is true, this means that anyone can have the power to influence the election right at their fingertips. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to post an infographic on my Instagram story urging my followers to vote.
Social media, they kind of curate what you want to see, and you kind of build you kind of build these spheres of influence for yourself. So I'd say nano-influencing, it's greatly affecting the election, and it's going to sway a lot of people towards one side or a lot of people towards another side.
Nano-influencing is given the power to the people this election day. For CitrusTV, I'm Nicole Aponte.
And the two major party candidates spent more money than ever this year on Facebook and Instagram advertisements, attempting to micro-target specific potential voters and persuade or dissuade them to turn out and vote. Right here at Syracuse University, the Illuminating Project is compiling the data to help increase transparency. And I talked over Zoom with the project's founder, Professor Jennifer Stromergalli, to learn more about it. We're joined by Professor Jennifer Stromergalli of the iSchool at Syracuse University. She is the founder of the Illuminating Project. Jennifer, we're glad to have you here. What can you tell us about the Illuminating Project and what it is here to do this year in 2020?
So the Illuminating Project is a data journalism project. It got started really following the 2016 election and the observation that the Trump campaign was potentially running advertisements on Facebook with the intention of demobilizing particular segments of the vote. And so back in 2016, there wasn't a way to study the advertisements on Facebook because the platform didn't make it available. In 2018, they did. They created an API, an application programming interface for projects like ours to be able to access the ads, look at the ads. And in our case, we created a dashboard, an interactive dashboard where journalists or the public can select the candidates, the dates, the various pieces of data that we collect about the advertisements from Facebook, as well as the data that we add to the analysis, such as the classifying the advertisement in terms of the policy topic or the type of ad it is, whether it's an attack, as well as the level of civility of the advertisement.
So let's get right into kind of what you've seen and what you've gathered through 2020. Obviously, we know turnout is way up. How is that represented in Facebook spending and Instagram spending, and what are you seeing in the data?
So since June, Trump and Biden have spent over $160 million on Facebook and Instagram ads. Now, just get your head around that for a second. $160 million. That's the total amount that was raised in the 2012 election, general election phase. So it is a very large amount of money that's being spent right now on the platform. In terms of patterns and things that we see, perhaps it's not a surprise, but Donald Trump tends to be more uncivil in his advertisements. He tends to, and you hear this in his rhetoric, he refers to Joe Biden, his opponent, as Sleepy Joe. There's a lot of attacks on Democratic supporters, connecting Democratic supporters to anarchy and to the Antifa movement. Meanwhile, Joe Biden tends to not talk much about the issues in his advertisements. What you see is Biden basically running as not Trump. So he tends to attack Trump more than Trump is attacking Biden in his advertisements. And Biden is attacking Trump mostly on persona, his character, his ability to lead the country, questioning his handling of the COVID crisis, the challenging the concerns about our economy, those kinds of things. We also see that there are some differences in who they're targeting in terms of gender and age. So for example, neither campaign is actually spending much money on advertisements targeted to your demographic, 18 to 24-year-olds, which is kind of interesting because that's where 18 to 24-year-olds live, especially on Instagram. But the campaigns are not spending a lot of money targeted to you guys. They're really targeting people who are older, 45 and plus, especially on the Trump side. The majority of his money is being spent on 45 and plus, which I think is kind of interesting because it is a social media platform. People who are 65 and older, only about 50% of them are actually on Facebook or Instagram, which says to me that that's the power of these platforms for advertising, that even though it's only reaching half of their target of that demographic, they're still spending a ton of money targeting that group of people.
You think the Biden campaign has sort of learned from Clinton, who didn't use Facebook nearly as much compared to Trump, and that's why you're seeing such the increase in spending from the Biden campaign after it was not the case 4 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. Trump was outspending Clinton on Facebook advertisements 4-1. And we are seeing right now that basically the two campaigns are at parity. That is, since June, they've roughly spent each about $80 million on Facebook advertisements. It is noteworthy that Biden's spending has increased on the platform since September, whereas Trump's has been relatively the same since the summer. But that likely could be explained by the fact that Biden received a massive cash infusion in September, out fundraising Trump by about a third. So he's got more money to spend. And Facebook is powerful at being able to really micro-target to those desirable demographics that the Biden campaign wants to mobilize and turn out to vote today.
All right, Jennifer Stormer-Galley, thank you for joining us. It's certainly a growing part of the ever-changing campaign landscape. Thank you for joining us.
And coming up next, an overwhelming majority of Nevadans have cast their ballots before Election Day. Our Oscar Offerman is going to break down what we can expect to see from those ballots.
And a Syracuse election night tradition is adapting to the pandemic. The traditional spaghetti dinner is changing to a drive-through format. We'll show you all the changes next on Citrus TV.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. They're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? Knowing your breasts can save your life.
Welcome back to Citrus TV. Nevada has been a battleground state since the 1990s. The state voted Republican in 2000 and 2004, and the Democrats have won the last 3 election cycles. Citrus TV correspondent Oscar Offerman is back to explain which candidate has the upper hand in the state as of now.
Unlike other swing states such as Wisconsin and Michigan, 4 years ago President Trump was actually projected to win Nevada by a slim margin on Election Day and then ended up losing it. According to the Real Clear Politics average from 2016, President Trump was leading Hillary Clinton by just under 1 point, with Clinton going on to win the state by 2.5. It is worth noting that while this shift did happen, it was nowhere near as large as polling discrepancies in other states, and it was within the margin of error. Also, President Trump does not have that polling advantage in Nevada that he had 4 years ago. The Real Clear Politics average going into Election Day has former Vice President Joe Biden up by 3.6 points on Trump, and the president has not led in a single poll in Nevada for almost a year. Now, as for the campaign, Nevada has been sidelined because it's not as important of a swing state as others, and the race does not look as competitive as it has in recent years. But the question remains, can Trump pull off a victory in a state that has not gone for the GOP since 2004? Well, he's going to have to rely on higher turnout from the rural areas of the state that go Republican, as well as low turnout from urban areas. But it will be a tall order, and Joe Biden should win the state thanks to high turnout in Clark County, which includes Las Vegas, the largest city in the state, as well as from the Reno area, which has gone Democratic in the last few cycles after voting Republican in years past. A Trump win in the state would be a major upset. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Oscar. That mail-in vote, obviously such a huge component of what we're seeing this year. And now we're going to get into some live results. So the 2 things that we've seen over the last few minutes, one of which is that we can call Kansas for President Donald Trump. Not a massive surprise over there. Some of those Midwestern states, some of those Southwestern states, those are going to be strongholds for the president. One of the things that I think is very interesting that I think not everybody was talking about was the South Carolina Senate race. So we can also call South Carolina Senate race for Lindsey Graham. Now, you talk about a lot of these Senate races. This is something we've seen historically over these last few election cycles. We're going to see it also in Kentucky with Mitch McConnell, where there are some of these challengers who Democrats get very excited about, and they pour money into them, thinking that they can upset these longtime senators. And I think Democrats have had a lot of struggles with some of those seats in the past. No different here with Graham and McConnell.
I mean, it's different if you're pouring money into Beto O'Rourke to take out Ted Cruz. That was a race that was polling pretty close, and he actually only finished down by 3 points. So that was a worthwhile investment to a certain extent, building up infrastructure in the state. But going forward on the Texas side this time, MJ Hagar was by no means an A-lister, by some arguments even a B-list candidate. That was not very wise investment, and Amy McGrath never polled well on a statewide basis. She ran close for Congress back in 2018, didn't go her way statewide, didn't bode much better, and it didn't help that she ended up annoying some of the progressive base that probably would have helped push her over the top if it were to happen at all.
You're absolutely correct, Brandon, and one of the things that happened with that race is that she had a very popular primary challenger, and she ended up, dividing the party a little bit. She had that massive bill for fundraising, and she ended up being in a really competitive primary that ended up, I think, slowing some of that momentum. McConnell benefited from that. And I think another thing, when you talk about Graham, we haven't talked about this much at all, but it's one of the biggest stories of the last month, is Graham's role in the Amy Barrett hearings has been huge. There was a lot of speculation about how those confirmation hearings were potentially going to affect Graham's candidacy. Everybody was looking at that video of Graham talking about during the Obama hearings how he was not going to hear a candidate in an election year. He ended up going back on that, but it didn't end up hurting him, clearly. Now, part of the reason for that, I think, is that Amy Barrett is an incredibly popular judge. If you look at her numbers after those confirmation hearings, there was a plurality and a majority for supporting Barrett at different junctions of that. And I think some of the people who were calling for the end of Graham's time in the Senate was a little bit overblown. I think people were prisoners in the moment of that. They weren't paying attention to what the electorate actually looks like in South Carolina.
And to be fair to those people who were giving a boost to Jamie Harrison, Lindsey Graham has not run a very well-run campaign. He had terrible debate performances all the way throughout the race. And objectively, similar to Tom Tillis in North Carolina, it's almost like looking at how their strategy has gone. It's like they're trying to find every single way to lose, but it's not affecting them yet. Lindsey Graham winning South Carolina. We can also say that John Cornyn, who I just mentioned earlier, has held his re-election. He has taken down MJ Hagar in Texas. And so after going all of this, let's go back to North Carolina, where we've been talking about a lot all night. And we've got Anthony Dabbundo and Manny Martinez at the wall right now. Guys, the results coming from North Carolina, this is looking like this state and Ohio are going to tell the real story of what we will know and where things are heading at the end of the night.
Yeah, I actually had to just change the font on the font size so that I could fit the extra decimal point in here in North Carolina. Biden, 49.4. Trump, 49.42. We're still at about an estimated 97% remaining of the vote counted so far. It could go either way. I think it's going to be within a point either way at this point.
It is razor thin, and it's one state where Joe Biden absolutely needed to pick up. Right now, it's looking like it honestly might be a bit of a struggle for Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think I'd rather be Donald Trump. Given the vote that we have left in the state, it probably is going to lean towards Trump. But again, we have not looked at the urban centers to see if they have any votes left. Now, one thing I want to touch on really quick, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia has announced they are not releasing any more results tonight. It's going to be almost impossible to make a prediction out of Pennsylvania. Right now, Trump has actually regained the lead in Pennsylvania. It's 50-48, but again, like I said, Philadelphia has not finished reporting, and all of the rural counties are doing Election Day first, mail-ins later. Therefore, they will skew Democratic. So Pennsylvania is going to be close, and it's going to take a while.
This is one of those states where we mentioned it might be a long time until we see those results, and it's definitely panning out that way tonight.
Yeah, the Secretary of State said it could be 2 days, maybe 3 in Pennsylvania. And as we take a look at Iowa as well, as we take a quick look at Iowa, Iowa also looking like it's going towards Trump's way as well right now. Going to be close, though, there to watch. Looking towards local elections, though, a former Syracuse football player was on Syracuse ballots today.
Talking Points analyst Liam Crowley spoke with state Senate candidate Sam Rogers to discuss what motivated him to pursue a career in politics.
What do you get when you combine a Cornell Law graduate with a former college football player? If you guessed
an assistant district attorney and running for state senate in New York's 53rd district,
you'd be correct. Sam Rogers is running for office here in Syracuse's district. Sam says he has always been about using his platforms to better those around him, which is what led him to a career in politics.
And that platform will help me reach the community, do the service work that I like to do. And so from that perspective, that's what got me into politics. That's what motivated me to want to run.
Sam turned down a job at a city-based law firm in favor of staying in Syracuse to carry out his aspirations. If elected, he hopes to motivate others to do the same.
We want to encourage and inspire other people to see Central New York for that. A place where they can carry out their dreams, have the opportunities.
While Sam's campaign headquarters are located here in East Syracuse, his first office was as a long snapper for Syracuse football, here at the Carrier Dome.
I was a starter on the football team for 4 years, started 50 consecutive games. I was elected a captain my senior year, and in that time I really got to do a lot of work in the community and learn that's what I love doing.
Sam's football experience has shaped his stance on many issues, most notably his perspective on disciplinary actions against police brutality.
Instead of making an individual's record public, you take the whole group. On the football team, we had 2 types of rules. One rule, only the offender had to get up at 6 a.m. and run in the morning. Didn't affect much change because it allows people to just say, well, I don't behave like that. It's not my problem. Other team rules made the whole team get up at 6 a.m. and run, and those rules enacted very swift and just change because it got the people who aren't breaking the rules to, kindly go up to the person that is and say, hey, That's unacceptable, and you need to change now.
While November 3rd's results will reveal if his transition from the gridiron to government is successful or not, Sam is proud to represent Syracuse regardless of the outcome.
Liam Crowley, Citrus TV News.
And election night in Syracuse wouldn't be the same without the traditional spaghetti dinner at the Our Lady of Pompeii Church. But the organizers are making some changes this year to adapt to the pandemic. Our Katie Lane shows how the annual event looks a little bit different this year.
You want it in the big? Thank you.
A must-stop Election Day spot in Syracuse is the spaghetti dinner held at Our Lady of Pompeii. But things are looking very different in the event's 71st year. Handshakes have turned into handouts as the dinner moved from dine-in to takeout. Yet another consequence of COVID-19. Dinner organizer Lucy Paris says despite the negativity surrounding the pandemic and the changes to this year's event, the volunteer spirits remain high.
The kitchen's still spirited and it's still all of our wonderful people, but not quite as many as we were used to.
Customers must mask up before they get their meatballs this year. To place an order, they can call the school or parish office. Then they wait here in the drive-through pickup line. Paris asked customers to wear face masks in line to abide by New York State guidelines. This is just one of the many ways the event is working to keep people safe from COVID-19.
All our volunteers had to sign in, get their temperatures checked this morning. Everybody, of course, has masks. We're distancing the best possible.
Even with all of the safety measures in place, Paris says some community members are still hesitant to come out to the dinner this year.
Everybody has their own comfort level, and we respect everybody's comfort level, whether they're volunteers or their patrons.
Although voters and their families won't be able to meet with the local candidates as in previous years, Paris says they can still support their community by ordering a takeout meal. All of the money raised benefits the Cathedral Academy at Pompeii. Katie Lane, Citrus TV News.
Great stuff, Katie. And former VP Joe Biden once graduated from the law school right here at Syracuse University, excuse me. Our own Ricky Sayer is going to report with an inside look at those who knew him during his time here. All that and more coming up next.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be?
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck. So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at It's On Us.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones.
Don't even.
And explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Welcome back to Citrus TV. Former Vice President Joe Biden actually attended Syracuse University's College of Law in the 1960s, graduating in 1968.
We're going to be hearing from Citrus TV's Ricky Sayer. He did some digging on Joe Biden's time at SU Law. He's got some interesting stuff for us. Ricky, what do you have?
Along a quiet Syracuse street, a slice of American history is marked by a small plaque.
Former Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, lived here.
Rob Mulligan has changed a lot about his home, but not everything.
Completely unique. Joe Biden probably touched these because he lived downstairs.
Back then, Joe Fahey was Biden's neighbor.
We got to know Joe pretty well.
Fahey was in his late teens. He remembers how Joe would lend a hand to his sister and her friends as they made their way to grade school.
And they'd all stick out their thumb, and he'd pull over, pick him up, and take him to school, and then go on to his own classes.
He took those classes at SU's law school, located back then in Whitehall. SU's campus very recognizable.
The type of loyalty that this school has extended to me is truly rare.
The law school is now located in Dineen Hall. Biden's yearbook photo still hanging up, just like classmate Deborah Goldman's.
He was just a regular guy.
And Gerald Houlihan's.
And he was always talkative and friendly.
He was in Biden's small study group.
And we were friends. We spent time together. We had parties together.
Joe Biden took some of his law school classes right here at Syracuse University's Grant Auditorium, which had just opened up at the time. Biden's classmates told us he would sit here in the front of the lecture hall, not because he had a lot to say, but simply because of the alphabetical seating chart.
He didn't seem immature, but he didn't seem like a future statesman either.
What do you mean by that?
He was not the most outstanding scholar in our class.
In fact, Biden graduated 76 out of 85 total students. It's a fact he was forced to reveal during his first run at the presidency in 1987. His admission coming after this exchange.
What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class?
In the first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom 2/3 of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class.
His classmates told me his class rank doesn't matter. But in 1987, the controversy spelled the end for Biden's campaign.
The exaggerated shadow of those mistakes has begun to obscure the essence of my candidacy and the essence of Joe Biden.
One of Biden's other mistakes came his freshman year at SU Law School. He was charged with plagiarizing a section of a paper. Houlihan remembers it vividly.
And the only thing he forgot is to put the quotes around it. And that's what we were learning at the time.
And I thought what I was doing, honestly, was the right way to do it.
Biden was allowed to retake the course to get the course failure stricken from his record. Houlihan remembers Biden as a quick learner in their study sessions. Another student remembers how prepared Biden was to be called on in class to speak about the previous night's reading.
And Joe seemed to really, number one, enjoy that. And number two, he's very good at it.
Robert Jewett said Biden was not one of SU's party guys. His life instead centered around his wife. As for his friends, Jewett said Biden gravitated towards former football players.
But the thing I really remember about him that was so striking is I used to say he's not an exclusive guy. He is an inclusive guy.
Jewett said Joe always had his eye out for less popular students, inviting people to join his group as the library closed at night.
Or he'd grab a hold of them and say, "Hey, come with us. We're going to go down to Marshall Street and have some pizza." And the fellow might say, "No, I got to get home." And Joe would grab him by the elbow and say, "Come on, you're coming with us."
Similar to how SU undergrads relish SU's social scene and sense of spirit, Jewett said he's heard Biden speak about his alma mater in a familiar way.
He waxes poetic, and he is moved almost to tears sometimes talking about his experiences. I don't think so much the academic experiences, but the sense of a brotherhood.
As of right now, Biden may be Syracuse's most famous alum, but he isn't uncontested as the alum most associated with the university. A presidential win could change that. And as for that plaque at 608 Stenard,
I think maybe we'll have to do an update if he does win.
Reporting in Syracuse, Ricky Sayer, CitrusTV News.
Thanks, Ricky. Not all of Biden's classmates are supporting him. Biden has identified lawyer Clayton Hale as a friend, but in a very brief conversation with us, he said he could not lend Biden his support. Now let's go back to checking some results. No new states to call, but we do have some results in from Arizona. 73% roughly in from the state, and right now, Joe Biden has an 8-point lead around the state. But on top of that, Mark Kelly, the Democratic Senate nominee trying to unseat Martha McSally, has a lead of 11 with 3/4 of the vote in the state. The most important number I'm seeing, though, is Maricopa County, typically a Republican stronghold. If you remember Sheriff Joe Arpaio, a big controversy with him, that's where he was originally elected. This holds Phoenix, and right now Joe Biden is carrying it by 9 points.
Yeah, that's a key number. And so to get into a little bit of why these counties matter and what is going on here, it's very simple. Maricopa County has the majority of the population of Arizona. It's a massive part of winning those electoral votes. Now, the dance for these Republican candidates is that you have to balance the amount of people in the rural areas to Maricopa. You cannot lose Maricopa by a big margin and win the state of Arizona. That's the issue the Trump campaign is looking at right now.
And we're going to talk to Anthony Dabbundo about this. Obviously, Arizona, pivotal now, especially since a lot of the other states that the Biden camp was hoping to peel away from Trump, this is becoming all the more essential, Anthony.
Yeah, if we look at the blue wall states in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan that are looking like they're very close at the moment, Arizona is a spot where Democrats are continuously optimistic. They've outperformed their polls in the last 2 presidential cycles there, and they outperformed their polls in the 2018 midterms there. You mentioned it when Martha McSally lost to Kirsten Sinema. McSally's down about 11 right now to Mark Kelly, the Democrat who is favored to win that race. Trump is down about 9. So right now, what we have is the early vote out of Maricopa County, and it is genuinely encouraging for the Democrats. But again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we need to wait for some election day vote to come in. One thing we're watching is southern Arizona. We saw in Florida that the Cubans, Trump was able to improve with the Hispanics there. We saw in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas that Trump was able to improve there. We need to see what happens in southern Arizona with the Hispanics there.
So something I want to go forward on with Arizona is thinking about the long term of this. It's going to be interesting to watch, Anthony. Before I let you go real quick, if Joe Biden doesn't pull out Arizona, what does the path to victory look like for him?
The path to victory becomes very simple. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. He needs to hold the Rust Belt, the 3 states that Hillary Clinton thought were in her blue wall 4 years ago. They were not. Joe Biden needs to hold those 3, and I don't know if we're going to have enough out of any of them tonight to make a definitive call.
All right, Anthony, thank you. New York 24 is still a tight race as the results come in, but it's not the only race we're watching tonight in central New York. We've got Greg Bradbury back live at the GOP headquarters where he's looking at a race with an SU grad on hand.
Yeah, Brandon, that SU grad is Sam Rogers, and he's running against Rachel May for the 53rd District State Senate seat. And now, right now, Rachel May is leading in Onondaga County, but Rogers says he's not too worried about the numbers and not paying much attention to them right now.
My campaign manager, he's kind of the numbers guy. I tell him, you know, I'm not interested in the speculative, this many people came, they were this party, that party. You know, I'll look at the results. There's a lot of smart people like you who I'm sure will tell us what they really mean, and I'm just excited for that process.
Perfect. And then in terms of reflect on the results in the coming days, and once we do get the results for that district. Reporting from GOP headquarters, I'm Greg Bradbury, CitrusTV News.
Thanks, Greg. Coming up, we continue to look at one of the states we've been talking about all night, North Carolina.
Stay with us.
But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. You're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. Yeah, we're getting so wet.
Welcome back to Citrus TV's election coverage. North Carolina is one of the crucial states that may decide control of both the White House and the Senate. It's one of those states that went red in 2016, but is going to come down to the wire this year. Isn't that right, Brandon?
Oh, absolutely. It is also home to one of the United States' most competitive Senate races. That's between incumbent Republican Tom Tillis and Cal Cunningham. the Democrat running. And both of those candidates have had horrid campaigns, scandal surrounding both of them. But right now, Trump and Tillis running about even, the narrowest of margins. We've been talking about Pennsylvania as the state to watch all night. It might end up being North Carolina. If these hold that tight, recount territory might be an approach. And voters across New York have waited in long lines to cast their ballots today. And as a result of this,
more than others.
I'm 59 years old, and this is probably the most important election that I've ever voted in.
Redmond says there are many issues that motivated him to vote, but there's one reason that sticks out to him in particular.
This country is divided like I've never seen before, and it's time for us to get back together as one country by getting this guy out of office. So that's the main reason why I'm voting, and hopefully why others are voting also.
Younger voters like 34-year-old Owen Daniel agree and say they are looking for change.
I'm tired of Trump's dangerous rhetoric, so I definitely voted against it.
59-year-old Martani Daru has voted in every election and says they are all significant.
I don't think it's any more important, but yeah, I was more motivated.
Both DeRoy and Daniel say they vote to be sure their voice is heard.
Well, I mean, voting every year, you know, your expectation is the person you're supporting is going to win. And then, you know, so you just wonder if you couldn't do more if the person you're supporting didn't.
I'm just hoping we see some change in government. That's kind of changed from the last 4 years.
And while today is the last day to cast your ballot, it's likely we won't know final election results for at least a week or two due to an increase in absentee voting. Reporting in Syracuse, Natalie Fahmy, CitrusTV News.
Thanks, Natalie. Now moving to the state of Georgia. In 2016, Donald Trump won Georgia by 5 percentage points. This year, that margin is expected to be tighter. Talking Points analyst Mariah Humiston joins us now to explain how Georgia could turn blue this time around. Now, Mariah, what is different this year from 2016? Why is Biden closer this time?
Now, Michael, before the election, people were projecting that Trump was only going to win Georgia by possibly half a point, but as the votes are coming in right now, that's looking a little bit different. Georgia is currently has about 55% of the votes in, with Trump with a 12-point lead, so it is looking less likely that Georgia could turn blue for Biden.
And again, we're keeping in mind, most of the numbers still yet to come. A lot of them are Atlanta that will be heavily Democratic, so this will tighten. So, and especially because of that fact, are Republicans concerned that Trump might lose Georgia?
So some Republicans are concerned. However, many are thinking that the votes coming in right now for Georgia that are blue are mainly due to absentee ballots, and they're hoping that they could pull ahead through in-person voting as the polls close and as more votes come in.
Now, Mariah, Georgia is not just important because of the presidency. What are the Senate races in Georgia looking like right now? Can you explain that to me?
So right now there are 2 Senate races in Georgia. However, the Senate races have turned into a runoff, so none of the candidates have had the total amount of votes going forward. Right now there is only 1 senator that has qualified to go into the runoff, and we are waiting right now to see if the polls show another senator this evening.
And really quick before we let you go, Mariah, if you were to make a call right now, where do you see this presidential race as well as the 2 Senate races heading?
Now, I think that the Senate race is a little bit too close to call right now. However, I think for the presidential race, we're going to see Georgia being very close. However, I think it's going to go to President Donald Trump tonight, similarly to 2016.
All right, Mariah Humiston, thank you. And again, Georgia, a sort of a tipping point here. One of those states that the Biden camp was hoping to pick up, but right now the numbers not looking good so far. But again, converse to most of these states, Georgia is actually going to have a lot of heavy Democratic votes coming in late, so that'll affect a lot of things. Well, let's check in again now with reporter Ricky Sayer. He's following the Biden campaign for us. Ricky, have you heard any new updates out of Balter's campaign tonight?
You have to wave. I can't see you. On this election night, we thought we'd visit the former house of one of the presidential candidates. Over my shoulder is where Joe Biden lived over 50 years ago when he was attending the Syracuse University Law School. If he wins the presidency, he would become the first Syracuse University graduate to do so. But his time at SU was not smooth sailing.
And sorry for the little bit of a miscommunication. That was what he was supposed to do before going into that story you watched on Biden a few minutes ago, but a little bit of a miscommunication there. He teased something that we've already seen. So anyway, in many key swing states, Puerto Rican Americans have been the target of outreach efforts from both campaigns. Adriana Rosas has more on what we can expect.
And coming up next, Natalie Fahmy will join us to tell us what we can expect from the state of Texas after the break.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
Welcome back to Citrus TV News' coverage of the 2020 election. One of the big issues of this year is absentee balloting. It has gone up all over the country, especially because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our own Owen Cienko takes a look at what that might do to affect this year's results.
With election season upon us, Onondaga County voters are flocking to the polls in record numbers to make their voices heard.
It's my privilege and my right to do this every year that I need to vote.
But this election comes with a twist, a global pandemic, and more county voters than ever are voting using these mail-in ballots. Take a look. In 2012, over 12,500 voters voted by mail. In 2016, over 14,000 voters. But in 2020, this year, over 50,000 voters. But with so many people doing their part by mail, that begs the question, why are so many others choosing to vote in person?
Well, partly it just kind of feels like you're more involved with the process. You come in here and you vote in person.
I just don't trust the mail-in voting, in my opinion. I mean, I think in theory it should work.
Yeah, I did an absentee ballot for the primary, which seemed appropriate at the time, but I think it's safe enough now, and it uses less resources to vote in person.
Well, whether you vote in person or in pajamas, one thing is for sure. This will not be an election year to forget. Reporting from Lafayette, New York, Owen Cienko, Citrus TV.
Historically red state, Texas, is now a battleground state in this 2020 election.
It couldn't be more true. Here to tell us more about the new momentum gained in Texas this year is Citrus TV's Natalie Fahmy. So first of all, this is rather surprising that it's even happening, and numbers are looking pretty good for Joe Biden out the gate. What are the latest things?
All right, so right now in Texas, 80% of the vote is posted, and it's a pretty small margin, just a 4% difference. Right now, Trump is in the lead, but 4 years ago, Trump did win by 9%, so still the vote is closer than it has been in past years, especially considering 80% of the vote is recorded.
So Natalie, when we're looking at this election here, what are we looking at specifically with how this race is going to be different from races we've seen in the past? Why is this one tightening up a little bit?
It's tightening up because this year in Texas, a lot of younger voters and blue voters have registered to vote. So because of that, the state was leaning a little bit more blue, but not enough, it seems, to give Biden the win.
All right, Natalie, finally, before we let you go, where do you think this is heading?
Right now it looks like Trump is going to end up taking the win, but nothing's certain right now. But it looks like it is going to end up being a smaller margin than it was in 2016. So we'll keep you posted.
All right, Natalie Fahmy with more reports from the Heartland. Thank you. The Latino vote has become crucial in swing states like Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Both candidates are vying for the increasingly important Puerto Rican vote and attempting to convince eligible voters in the mainland that they will do most for the Caribbean island. Adriana Rosas joins us to discuss both candidates' plans for Puerto Rico.
Thanks. With millions of eligible Puerto Rican voters living in the mainland United States, the two presidential candidates are attempting to sway them with promises on rebuilding the island. Biden's campaign plan for Puerto Rico says it aims to boost the island's economy and expedite release of allocated federal aid. He also plans to expand SNAP, Medicaid, and supplemental Social Security benefits for islanders. Biden said he supports auditing the public debt, but did not specify avenues to solve the debt crisis. Biden also promised to address the island's territorial status through a binding process where Puerto Ricans can determine their own fate. The Trump team has not released a formal plan for Puerto Rico, but President Trump has been vocal about opposing statehood for the island. After Trump delayed in dispersing approved disaster relief funding, the president recently announced the release of $13 billion in aid. President Trump also supported cutting the island's Medicaid budget, with Puerto Rican voters being a crucial electorate in important states like Florida and Pennsylvania. Both campaigns have been working tirelessly to enamor them in the final days of the election. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Adriana. And after the break, some of the issues the next president may face overseas. Citrus TV's Rob Flax joins us.
And I'll be taking a look at the latest results in the swing states in the upper Midwest.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. They're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? You don't know. Knowing your breasts can save your life.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation letter. You're resigning? Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me. Okay, but remember, it's not what you say. It's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hey, look, it's those guys. Are you good to drive?
I'm fine.
How many did you have?
I should be fine.
You should be.
Go and step out of the vehicle for me.
See ya, buddy. Good luck.
So turns out, buzz driving and drunk driving, they're the same thing, and it costs around $10,000. So not worth it.
Welcome back to our third hour of live coverage on election night. We're heading straight to a check-in with our reporter Greg Bradbury at the Embassy Suites near Destiny, USA.
Yeah, guys, well, right now, the CATCO campaign has got to be smiling with 90% of the vote in Onondaga County. They currently have a 54 to 42% lead over Dana Balter. Now, one thing we haven't seen is John CATCO. He has not been here. We don't know if he will be making an appearance here, but we'll keep you updated with the latest as it comes out and the latest numbers as well. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Greg. We're going to be coming back to you with results checks as this night goes on. And we've got more projections and calls rolling in tonight as we reach this home stretch here. So let's talk about CATCO and Balter for a little bit here. What are you seeing right now, Brandon?
Well, I mean, the fact that CATCO has a roughly 10-point lead in Onondaga County right now says a lot, because of all the counties within this district, that is by far the most likely to go blue, because of course Syracuse is within it. If John CATCO is running 10 points ahead of Balter in Onondaga County, I think, first of all, that shows great signs for his reelection. B, that could show that this blue wave that we've been anticipating for Joe Biden may not be as universal as we're seeing, and it might be isolated to just the most major metros across the United States. Because right now, this election's still razor thin, and we have our own Anthony Dabbundo at the Chroma to just tell us a little bit more about what he's seeing right now.
Yeah, actually, one thing to note about New York 24, the mail-in votes will come later. So we may see a shift towards Balter as we get going. Also, Balter carried Onondaga County by 1 point in 2018 when she lost by 5. So not great results for the Balter campaign, but Joe Biden is getting good numbers so far out of Arizona. The election day vote is starting to come in. Joe Biden, 53.7. Donald Trump, 45.1. Again, we've talked about this. It's Maricopa County. This light red county here, Phoenix, makes up 60% of the Phoenix and the suburbs make up 60% of the vote of Arizona. And Biden is getting more than the numbers he needs right there. The question is, can the GOP cut into that with the election day voting? And can they run better in Pima County, which is the southern blue county, and Coconino County right here down by the border? If they run ahead there, they've got a good shot. Now, Ohio looks very good for President Trump. We've seen the Appalachian whites that make up the heart of the Rust Belt, so to speak, do very well for the president here. He's underperformed by a couple of points, but not much different from 2016. And when we look at North Carolina, looks like it's going to be still a pretty close race right now, but Donald Trump is gaining there. So right now, it's very close, but really this election is coming down to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
And honestly, we've been talking about Pennsylvania all night. Do you think that, since it's going to take a few days before us to get PA, that North Carolina is sort of the Pennsylvania of tonight, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the closest race tonight. Arizona may end up getting there as well. Jonathan Tamari of the Philadelphia Inquirer just said that there's 2.2 million ballots that need to be counted out of Pennsylvania, and if there's anything we've learned tonight, it's that those ballots will skew very Democratic. We saw some absurd numbers for the Democrats, 90% in Montgomery County, 80% in Allegheny County, 83% in Delaware County. All of those numbers, if the Democrats are that skewed for mail-ins, Pennsylvania is far from over, but I still believe I'd rather be Donald Trump there based on some of the full returns we're getting out of the rurals.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I mean, those results are going to be coming in the last hour and a half of our coverage here. We are going to be getting you a lot of those live results as they come in. And one of the issues facing the next president will be the role of the United States abroad, specifically how relations with the European Union may change. Our Rob Flax joins us with how Trump's outlook stacks up against Biden's. Rob?
Well, as these two men are competing to become the most powerful leader of the free world, they're going to have to deal with the European Union, and their policies, guys, could not be more different. On the one hand, we have Trump, who was supporting the Brexit withdrawal. He saw it as an opportunity for that same kind of right-wing populism as supported him in the United States. He actually wanted an a la carte trade deal with countries that might have fallen out of the EU, trading with them individually and not collectively, and that didn't happen. So a lot of diplomatic time was wasted on areas such as that. Well, Trump actually is enjoying a good amount of support from those right-wing populist countries in the EU, such as Poland or Hungary, but the mainland Europe, they're not liking him at all. I spoke to Professor Glyn Morgan about why those relations were damaged.
And under Trump,
the level of anti-Americanism and hostility towards America has been off the charts. The United States is trusted less than almost any other country by the French and the Germans. America has really burned its boats with Europe under Trump in terms of climate change, in terms of its the policy with Iran, and that has filtered down. And in most countries, possible exceptions, Poland, Hungary, the United States is extremely disliked.
But guys, when we look at Biden, on the other hand, he has a completely different set of trade policies and objectives when he comes to the EU. He sees it as his role to renew the State Department that might have been damaged in those relations under the Trump administration, and that's most likely going to mean an increase in funding. Trump historically dropped funding for programs such as NATO and defense spending, and Biden is going to think that he needs to get those up. And critically, there's going to be the issue of climate change. Biden agreeing that we might be seeing the end of the internal combustion engine as early as 2030, an opinion matched by European car manufacturers with a record number of electric vehicles. Biden supporting that plan and an all-electric grid here in the United States. And crucially, Biden also wants to keep Britain in the EU. Biden, as an Irish Catholic, has a soft spot for Ireland and wants to keep the Good Friday Agreement going forward. He does not want to see a backstop fallout or any other kind of damaging trade. And really, according to Professor Glyn Morgan, if Biden were to be elected, it would be the death knell of Brexit in the United Kingdom, to the point where Nigel Farage, the key politician responsible for Brexit, was actually campaigning with the Trump administration as early as this Friday.
All right, Rob, thank you. Before we move along, Biden has won the state of New Hampshire and its 4 electoral votes. It is still a razor-thin race, and Donald Trump still has the Electoral College edge. And as results continue to pour in, one of the states we won't hear from is Alaska. They don't close polls until we're off the air. That said, the result could heavily influence who gets a Senate majority as well as the balance in the House. CitrusTV's Spencer Queskin joins us to break down what to expect from America's last frontier. Spencer?
Thanks, guys. Alaska could prove instrumental in this race when every single Electoral College vote, every single Senate seat, and every House seat matters. Currently, incumbent President Donald Trump is up in Alaska with a 7-point lead at 51.1%, while Democratic challenger Joe Biden only holds 43.2% of early projections. While Alaska has only 3 Electoral College votes, for a presidential race as close as this one, those 3 votes could decide the race if the race comes down to the wire. For the Senate, incumbent Republican Dan Sullivan holds a 2-point lead at 48%. Independent challenger Al Gross holds 45%, and Alaskan Independence challenger John Howe holds 7%. Both Republican Dan Sullivan and Independent Al Gross have spent millions on advertising in Alaska, as, with only 2% between them, this race seems to be very close. With only a 2% lead for the Republicans, Democrats are looking at this Senate race for a potential upset, as only a few races have to be won for the Democrats in order for them to hold a majority in the Senate come 2021. For the House at large, incumbent Republican Don Young holds a 5-point lead at 49% against independent challenger Alice Galvin at 44%. Democrats are also looking at this race for a potential upset in order to expand their majority in the House come 2021. Spencer Queskin, reporting from Los Angeles, back to you.
Thanks, Spencer. And Wisconsin is one of the states that delivered the president his 2016 victory. We'll break down what we're seeing from Wisconsin so far after the break.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Here's your check.
Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back. Montana's Senate was supposed to be an easy win for Republicans, but polling has had Republican Senator Steve Daines and Democrat Governor Steve Bullock in a dead heat throughout those campaigns. Now, Brandon, let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing, because what we're seeing right now really has been unpredictable across the country. What are we seeing from Montana right now?
Well, when it comes to Montana and the results that are coming in, they are leaning blue. Joe Biden actually has a lead in the state by 1% with just about a quarter of the votes in. That's expected to go towards Trump, though, at the statewide level. That is not by any means a swing state, but you know, the Senate race is going to be closer, and we have our very own Natalie Fahmy joining us right now to discuss this race in Montana. So, Mike, why don't you start?
So, Natalie, what are the numbers looking like in this race right now? We're getting live election results at this point in the night. What are you seeing?
All right, well, right now, not a lot. Only 25% of results are reported for the Montana Senate right now, but the Democratic candidate is up by 10%. So it looks like he's up by a lot, but again, only 25% is reported at the moment.
That, of course, former Montana governor, or current Montana governor, Steve Bullock, who is looking to elevate his way to the Senate. And, you know, Bullock ran a presidential campaign, actually, which was fascinating. But so is that the big reason why this race is so tight? Is his name rec really helping him that much?
His name rec is helping him a lot, and another thing that's helping him, he has the highest approval rating for any elected official right now at 60%, so that's really helping him, and Montana residents really liked the way he handled the COVID-19 pandemic, so that's encouraging a lot of voters to go to the polls and vote for him.
So this race has actually gotten a lot of national attention. It is not just staying within the boundaries of Montana. Why has it been picked up that much?
Beyond the fact that the incumbent candidate is losing by such a large margin right now, another reason is they have one of the largest fundings for any Senate race, so that's another reason it's gaining so much national attention. There's two really unique statistics in this race.
So Natalie, really quickly before we move on, can you give me a prediction in this one?
You know, it looks like Bullock's going to end up taking away Montana right now. He's up by 10% or by 10 points right now, but only 25% is reported again, but it's looking pretty good for him. Again, he has the highest approval rate of any elected official right now.
This race could decide the balance of the Senate. Natalie Fahmy, thank you. Another surprisingly close Senate race is in Kansas. Citrus TV's Jacob Goldberg joins us to guide us through this. Jacob, what should viewers know about the race?
After longtime Kansas Senator Pat Roberts announced his retirement, Republicans never imagined that the race would be even this close. Although Republicans have been insisting that the race is not competitive, the polls do say otherwise. A recent internal GOP poll shows Republican Representative Roger Marshall ahead by 4 points. However, his Democratic opponent Barbara Bollier has her own internal poll showing her ahead by 2 points. Bollier is a state senator and has out-fundraised Marshall by more than $5 million in a race that has seen $65 million in campaigning. Kansas has not had a Democratic senator since 1932, and at the moment, the race is too close to call. The state's red history definitely favors Marshall, as undecided voters tend to vote Republican. With the race being as close as it is, both candidates made last-minute campaigning a priority. They each held events over the weekend trying to persuade as many voters as possible before November 3rd. The Republican Senate majority is up for grabs, and the Democrats are hoping that Bollier can win and take a very impactful seat in the Senate.
Thanks. Now, Joe Biden has held a lead in Wisconsin over President Trump for most of this year. Wisconsin is one of the key swing states for both candidates, and the result there is going to go a long way to deciding the victor here.
No kidding. And here to tell us more about Joe Biden's advantage is Citrus TV analyst Mariah Humiston. So, first of all, again, Wisconsin hasn't been close for that long, but what are those looking like so far?
So prior to the election, Biden was looking to lead Wisconsin by 11 points, but now with 55% of the votes counted in Wisconsin, it's looking like Trump is leading by 3 points.
Now, Mariah, this has been a refrain throughout the night of our coverage of the Midwest. How are the events in Kenosha playing a role in Wisconsin in this election year? That you know, those wounds are so fresh, the destruction, the protests, everything going on. How is that affecting what we're seeing?
So Wisconsin voters right now are specifically looking at Kenosha and the recent shooting of Jacob Blake, as well as all of the civil unrest over the summer. Now, black voters in Wisconsin, and specifically in Kenosha, are looking at not only what the state is doing, but what the country is doing to address these tensions, as well as focus on the civil unrest in the state and the rest of the country that has not quite yet been resolved.
And so, Mariah's going to what the voters want, and again, real quick, just to make a quick note, a lot of the reason that Trump seems to be ahead right now, those results from Milwaukee, which is a very heavily Democratic city, and Green Bay, which tends to be a little bit more conservative, both of those are going to take more time, so we're not going to hear from them probably a full decision until early morning. But when it comes to what voters were thinking about when they went to the polls, what are voters concerned about in Wisconsin in this election?
So as I mentioned earlier, Wisconsin voters are worried about police reform, but also they're worried about the coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic. Within recent weeks, Wisconsin is one of the states in the country that has seen quite a large spike and increase in cases. So as voters are going to the polls or mailing in or filling out absentee ballots or early voting, they're looking right now to see whether or not what they're going to do for the coronavirus.
We'll see how that all plays out. Mariah Humiston, thank you. And when we come back, the city of Syracuse is in deep financial trouble after the pandemic, how that affects Syracuse's voters, and more.
And the pandemic threw a wrench in the plans of many political clubs on campus during a major election year, how college Democrats and Republicans are adapting. Coming up on our election coverage.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. They're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? You don't know much. Knowing your breasts can save your life.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome back to Citrus TV's election coverage. We've been talking about the Dana Balter-John Katko race all night, and we're going to hear a little bit more from our own Ricky Sayers' interview with Dana Balter.
I know I can win this time because a lot has changed electorally since the last race. Chief among those things is the fact that in 2016, John Katko said Donald Trump would never earn his support. And he made one of the most remarkable turnarounds I've ever seen in politics, and earlier this year said that he endorses Donald Trump for re-election because we're better off than we were 3 years ago, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Where do you see John Katko's views on the spectrum?
Well, John Katko is definitely a conservative, which by itself is not a problem. There are lots of conservative folks who live in this district. The problem with John Katko's positions is that they're out of touch with Central and Western New York values, and they represent the extreme fringes of his party and of the political spectrum. Perfect example is his view on abortion rights. He said that if he could, he would vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. He's voted multiple times to defund Planned Parenthood. He is interested in making abortion illegal even when a woman's life is at risk. And the fact of the matter is that 76% of Americans support Roe v. Wade, support maintaining access to legal, safe abortion. Same thing with guns. John Katko opposes even the most basic common sense gun safety measures. He opposes universal background checks. That is something that 97% of Americans support. By definition, his view is a fringe, extreme view. And that's not the kind of ideology that we need representing us in Congress.
What about in terms of bipartisanship? He's ranked 17th most left compared to House Republicans, and he joined bipartisan bills on the 6th most often compared to all representatives, and that's according to GovTrack. Is it better to have someone as a representative who is very willing to be bipartisan?
It's not about dragging one way or the other. What we can and we should have from our representative is somebody who's committed to working with people on the other side of the aisle, and somebody who is making decisions based on a set of values and principles that drive them and ensure that what they're fighting for is in the best interests of the people of this district. Now, I am all for co-sponsoring bills across the aisle, and I will do that when I'm in Congress. But the fact of the matter is, on the issues that matter the most, that have the greatest effect on the lives of working families here in our district, John Katko over and over again stands with Donald Trump. He voted with Donald Trump to sabotage our access to health care. It's now we are at the point a week after Election Day where the Supreme Court is going to hear the case to overturn the ACA. John Katko's vote did that. John Katko voted with Donald Trump to give $750 billion in tax giveaways to the corporations who bankroll his campaign, adding $2 trillion to our debt and putting Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block. He over and over again stands with Donald Trump and his corporate donors instead of Central and Western New Yorkers. That is not what we need in Congress.
Very quickly, can you think of any specific ideas or issues, bills even, that are Republican-led right now that you would join in on that maybe most Democrats wouldn't?
I don't know where most Democrats will stand because I haven't gotten there to talk to them about it yet, but a policy that I support that comes out of conservative think tanks is a carbon fee and dividend. We all know that the climate crisis is the biggest existential threat that we face. And the best thing we could do tomorrow to help get global warming under control is to put a price on carbon pollution. Make the polluters pay, and then take the money that we collect through that fee and distribute it to households all across America. This is a market-based solution to address the climate crisis. It comes from conservative think tanks. It is a bipartisan policy. Congressman Katko opposes it. As soon as I get to Congress, I'll be working to get it passed.
Here at Syracuse University, the pandemic has caused a big shift in plans for campus political organizations. Both SU College Democrats and Republicans have changed their plans for events leading up to Election Day and on Election Night. Talking Points analyst Oscar Offerman is back to discuss their plans.
SU College Democrats have been very busy in the build-up to the election. Instead of holding physical events to get out the vote, the organization has held phone drives and Zoom calls to encourage people in the area and university community to vote. College Democrats political director Noah Estling talked about how campus Democrats were feeling leading up to the election.
The mood, it's probably like a lot more like anxious. I feel like we have like the election coming up, everything like that. We're like you don't know what's going to happen, and like a lot of us are just like we really want to see Joe Biden win.
Estling also confirmed the organization's plans for a virtual election night instead of a physical event because of the virus.
Streaming on Zoom of the election. Hopefully we're gonna be able to get as many people as possible onto like a Zoom so we can live stream the election night with each other.
A source from SU College Republicans has told CitrusTV that in lieu of an in-person event, they will be holding a virtual event via Zoom like the Democrats are. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Oscar. And our reporters went almost everywhere in Syracuse to speak with voters today. Our Alexandra King went on the campaign trail this morning and followed Dana Bulitzer's fight to unseat John Katko. She met with one student who volunteered on the candidate's campaign.
In this year's election, young voters are finding more ways to get involved than just sending in a ballot. When Angus Dorward, a junior at Syracuse University, saw that he could become a finance fellow for Dana Balter's congressional campaign, he jumped at the opportunity.
I couldn't vote in the last election. I want to put as much effort into the next one as I can. I feel like as a young person, I have to live a lot longer in this world than maybe a lot of the politicians that are currently making decisions.
And so, he began phone banking for the campaign and asking voters throughout the district to support and donate to Dana Balter.
Before all the fundraising deadlines and everything happened, we would do a bunch of donor research, reach out, basically cold call people that have either donated for the campaign before or we hope would be interested.
Finance fellows and phone bankers like Angus are responsible for helping create voter plans for those in New York's 24th congressional district.
So we'd put them in touch with either people that are driving people to early polls, help them find their local polling location, help them get in absentee ballots.
The amount of support for the campaign has been overwhelming, especially from the younger volunteers.
Teenagers, like 16-year-olds in the Syracuse community working to help this campaign because, yeah, they can't vote, but yes, they can volunteer their time. I feel like there's a lot of hope in the Syracuse community to make some good positive change.
No matter who the vote is for, Angus hopes that everyone exercises their right to vote this year. Alex King, Citrus TV.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now, before the pandemic at the Central New York area, Syracuse was projected to finish off the fiscal year strong.
But big spending in response to the coronavirus now has the city in a big financial bind. Manny Martinez is here to break down Syracuse's money problems. And Manny, wow, this is a bit of a mess.
Yes, guys. So at the start of 2020, Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh was looking at a budget surplus for the city of about $1.5 million. Syracuse was actually on track to add to its cash reserves by the end of the 2019-20 fiscal year that ended in June. The pandemic, well, it erased all of that. The New York Times published a study of 150 American cities, and it found Syracuse to be one of the hardest hit by the coronavirus. The city relies heavily on sales tax and state aid to bring in cash. Those two sources combine for 65% of the money coming into the city. With restrictions on who can go shopping when and where, and Governor Cuomo cutting state aid by 20%, Mayor Walsh said Syracuse saw a $41 million reduction in revenue, which led to a $34 million budget shortfall. To save cash, Mayor Walsh cut $18 million from the city's budget this fall, with hiring freezes and mandatory furloughs in just about every city department, including the mayor himself. Still, Syracuse will have to dip into its cash reserves for another $16 million to balance the budget this year. So that leaves the city with about $34 million in its rainy day fund, and Mayor Walsh has fought hard for his city. He's been asking the federal government for help in mitigating the financial strain the pandemic is placing on American cities like Syracuse. The House of Representatives did approve a bill that would give the city of Syracuse directly $50 million in aid, but the bill is stalled in the Senate. So what was once a pretty financial picture for Syracuse is now looking quite grim. Brandon, Michael?
Thanks very much, Manny. Now, coming up after the break, we're going to be giving you a look at some election results from around the country. That and more coming up next.
And when we come back, we'll be taking a look inside our own decision desk at how the race is playing out amongst multiple key swing states.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape.
consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hello, welcome back into Citrus TV's election coverage. We've got a lot of live results for you coming up here. We've had stuff coming in from all around the country. We've already discussed Arizona, North Carolina, those states in detail. And Brandon, as this picture clears up a little bit, we're looking at a really long process for election night.
No kidding, and all of the votes have come in, or are starting to come in rather, from those West Coast states. Oregon, California, Washington State all called for Biden. Idaho called for President Trump. So right now, Joe Biden has the lead with 205 roughly electoral votes secured. But right now, looking at where everything else stands, it seems like most of the states are decided, and the one big thing left is Pennsylvania. Right now, based on where each state is projected to go, it's all coming down to that one state. Neither's going to reach 270 until we get the results from the Keystone.
Absolutely, Brandon. We're going to be looking at that upper Midwest region. That is where this is going to count. This one's coming down to the wire. You know, when we were looking at the beginning of the show here, we were really concerned about those early results. The early results were going to tell the story of how long this thing is going to go on. And now, the way this is shaping up, this is not going to be a quick night. We're not going to be declaring a victor on election night. We're not going to be declaring a victor potentially for some time.
So yeah, it's going to be a real mess, and we're now going to head over to Watson Hall, where we've got our own Anthony Dabbundo and Manny Martinez there. So guys, take it away.
Well, it's a 11:15, and there's still a lot left out on the table, and both sides have things to look forward to still. Anthony Dabbundo, Manny Martinez. The Citrus TV election special continues. We're here in the Watson War Room, where things have quieted down for the moment, but they're still ready to ratchet right back up. So, Anthony, what are we looking at? What's the deal? What's happening right now?
I think the scenario that a lot of people around the country feared may be coming to happen, where we have a very close election where Donald Trump has won the South pretty convincingly, and now we're in the upper Midwest where Biden is hoping to win back some of those white working class voters, and it's going to come down to mail-ins. And that's the fear that a lot of people had in the upper Midwest about what may happen, about how the result could swing on the millions of ballots that still need to be counted in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Madison, in Philadelphia, where we're hearing that there's a lot of ballots that still need to be counted. Those will decide our next president at this point, pretty much, because there is no other path for Joe Biden unless he can win at least 2, and he may need 3 of those upper Midwest states. And it's sounding very similar to 2016, except this time there actually are mail-in ballots that still need to be counted.
And what are both campaigns saying right now at this instant?
Yeah, the Biden campaign is starting a drive-in event right now. People are in their cars, and I'm wondering if that's impacting how much they really know about how well the race is going, because they seem more optimistic than they probably should be right now.
All right, well, we'll go back to Brandon and Michael in the studio.
All right, guys, we're going to be giving you some more live election results just this minute. Now, it's the big moment of truth. We are going to be calling Florida for Donald Trump. This is a momentous occasion, and if you look at some of the time difference, this is actually, interestingly enough, Florida was called for 2016 with Donald Trump at 10:50 in 2016.
Well, not that
it's now
far, only about
11:15.
25 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, it's eerie how similar it's been. The difference is that this time around, what's going to deliver that election is Hispanic voter turnout. It's not going to be any of the other things. It's going to be a little bit of a different picture from what we saw in 2016, but 11-16, eerily similar results so far.
And right now, again, we just talked about the way the presidential race is going to look. Let's start digging into the aspects that is the Senate and looking at how things shape out. One state I want to look at is Georgia really quickly, because they're in a unique situation. They have 2 elections going on, one regular, one special. That special election to fill the seat of Johnny Isakson, who resigned last year. Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed, she will move on to the runoff, her Republican opponent in that jungle primary, which, again, every candidate from every party goes on the same ballot. So 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats ran for that seat. It's going to be Kelly Loeffler, the incumbent, and then Ralph Warnock running against her. That will be one runoff, and David Perdue running against John Ossoff in the other race. And what's fascinating about that is if that doesn't go to 50%, if any candidate doesn't reach 50% in those races, they go to a runoff. And so depending on how this outcome goes, that could impact those seats. And say Biden pulls out the Electoral College victory, I think the natural lean of Georgia could very well kick in and send 2 Republican senators as normal. But if Trump gets reelected, I could very well see a world where in a tense runoff situation, right after Trump ekes out an Electoral College victory, that would be very possible that we could see 2 senators, Democrats from Georgia.
It's an interesting scenario, Brandon, and as we get into the math here, we're obviously focusing on the presidency. That's the big thing we're talking about tonight. But the thing that we have to focus on as well is what this Senate is going to look like. And we talk about these individual Senate races so frequently, we lose the bigger picture a little bit. So what we're looking at now is that if there is going to be a Biden presidency, it's going to be one with a probably very slim Senate majority. 50, 51, it does not look like 53, 54, which was the optimistic prediction from Democrats. It doesn't look like that's going to be in the cards. What that means is that's going to be massive for the first year and a half of the Biden presidency. That's a presidency that's going to probably be really, people are going to be judging that by the COVID response, because it does not look like legislative efforts are going to be particularly possible with such a slim majority. What that means is that whenever there are defections, there's not going to be anything getting done.
And I think what's interesting is, say you do get a situation where a trifecta government does emerge from this, what could very well happen is you could see 2021 and 2022 looking a lot like 2017 and 2018. Republicans had a majority in all houses, but they were all very slim. And one John McCain thumbs down can change everything, and we saw that back, and it'll be interesting to see how this all fleshes out.
Absolutely, Brandon. And now, after the break, Natalie Fahmy will return to tell us what we're seeing from Arizona.
And we'll take a look at our maps and projections. Stay with us.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Your girls have been with you through every moment of your life. They were with you when you felt unbreakable. With you that time you felt most alone. And with you when you realized you would never be. They were with you when you shared your love with the world. And with you when she became your world. Your girls have never left you. They're still with you right now. But how well do you know them? Knowing your breasts can save your life.
Welcome back to Citrus TV News' live election night coverage. We're going to get back to monitoring results, and we're going to get back to some of those key swing states here in the home stretch.
And one of those is Arizona. We've been talking about it all night. After 2016, it would be a major win for either campaign. Trump won by just 4 points back in 2016, and back with the latest on what 2020 is looking like is Talking Points analyst, Citrus TV analyst Natalie Fahmy. So a lot of numbers have come in from the state right now. No call made yet, but what are they telling us?
All right, right now 75% of the numbers are reported, and Biden is up by by about 6% right now. So he's up by quite a bit at the moment, and he's up by 10 points in Maricopa County, which is pretty crucial for this race in Arizona.
So Natalie, let's talk about the paths for victory for both of these candidates. How important is Arizona going to be for the path to victory for both candidates here?
Arizona is going to end up being pretty important. Like you said, in 2016, Trump did win this state by 4 points. So the fact that it is 75% reported right now, and he is down by quite a bit, it's quite shocking. So we're going to see what Trump ends up doing in this state, and that could end up predicting what's going to happen in this election.
Still a lot left to go, but it looks like, especially for Joe Biden, that there is very little path to victory without Arizona. So what are you predicting for this race?
It honestly looks like Joe Biden is going to end up winning this race in Arizona. He's up by quite a lot right now, and although his lead has dropped by a bit, it is still up by a marginal amount. So it looks like Biden is going to end up winning this one. And again, Trump only won by 4 points in 2016, so unless he pulls out with larger leads in some key counties, it's unlikely that Trump's going to win Arizona.
When Joe Biden ran for vice president, it was against John McCain representing Arizona. He might eke that out tonight. Natalie Fahmy, thank you. With record early voting turnout on the West Coast, the race for the presidency, Senate, and House could come down to voters on the other side of the country.
Here to break down the races on the West Coast is Talking Points analyst Spencer Queskin. Spencer?
Thanks, guys. The race on the West Coast in some counties is really close and will be key in determining the outcome of the presidential, Senate, and House election. For the presidential election, Nevada, Arizona, Montana, Colorado, and possibly Texas are swing states. On your screen now are the likely outcomes of each state with regards to current polling. The most important state here is Arizona, which Trump won in 2016, but it looks like it might go to Biden now. The race for the Senate is also close on the West Coast. On your screen now is the predicted outcome of the Senate, with Arizona, Montana, and Colorado as swing states. For the House, each state has their own swing districts. For Washington, in District 3, the race between Republican incumbent Jamie Herrera Butler and Democrat Carol Long is close. For California Districts 1, 4, 21, and 25, the race is close. And for California 48, the election between incumbent Democrat Harley Ruda and Republican Michelle Steele is extremely close and could go either way. For Utah's District 4, the election between Democrat incumbent Ben McAdams and Republican Burgess Owens is tight. For Arizona's District 1, the race between Tiffany Shedd and Tom O'Halloran is relatively close. For Colorado, District 3's race between Republican Lauren Boebert and Democrat Diane Bush is tight. For New Mexico, the District 2 race between Democrat incumbent Xochitl Torres-Small and Republican Yvette Harlett is close. And for Texas, Districts 21, 23, and 24 are close, with Texas's 21st district race between Republican incumbent Chip Roy and Democrat Wendy Davis being tight. Now overall, Democrats are looking to pick up around 90 seats in the House on the West Coast, and Republicans are looking to pick up around 50 seats in the House on the West Coast. But that could change as early voting is counted and new ballots are being cast, as, on the West Coast, there's been a record-breaking surge of early voting. Spencer Queskin, reporting from Los Angeles, back to you.
Thanks, Spencer. Coming up, Maine is one of the best chances for Democrats to pick up a Senate seat. 23-year Senator Susan Collins is in the fight for her life. What the numbers look like there, next.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent. We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please,
Don't quit on me. Okay. But remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome back to the Citrus TV News Election Special. We've only got about another half hour with you, so let's check in on one of the most competitive Senate races out there.
Our Benjamin Schiller is here to tell us more about the main Senate battle. So it's Susan Collins, the 23-year incumbent, versus Sarah Gideon. So right now, what do those numbers look like?
This race is awfully close between Gideon and Collins, even though less than 20% of the vote is in. Right now, Susan Collins has a large lead of 18%, but that should not be the defiance of this race. It's going to really depend upon the urban counties, such as Cumberland County, for Sarah Gideon to pick up some votes in this race.
So Ben, let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about here with these counties. How is Gideon doing in the counties surrounding the Portland, Maine area?
So right now, Cumberland County, which is home to Portland, Kennebec County, which is home to the state capital of Augusta, and York County, which borders New Hampshire, have less than 12% of the vote in. This is where Sarah Gideon will get a lot of votes, and if Sarah Gideon wants to win this election, she's going to need to pick up at least 60% of the votes from Cumberland County.
And we talked about a little bit earlier in the night the unique system that Maine has with its voting. So can you just explain for the viewers at home why this race is probably going to take by far the longest of anything tonight to call?
So Maine has a policy in place which does not allow for the electronic transmission of ballot information. So what this means is that the Secretary of State's office in Augusta records all the ballots for it to be broadcasted at home. So we won't know exactly who will win this race tonight. This is simply a repeat of the 2018 election, when it took more than 2 weeks for them to find out the winner of the congressional race in Maine too.
All right, on top of ranked choice voting, that's going to slow things down. Ben Schiller, thank you. And as we near the end of our broadcast, we're going to take another update from our team of researchers and analysts live in Watson Theater tonight.
There's still several important races we're waiting on right now. Anthony and Manny are going to have our final updates from Watson Theater.
All right, guys, we're back here in the Watson War Room. Let's talk to some of our researchers from the night who've done a great job so far. Let's start with Mia McGregor. What have you seen that stands out to you from the night?
So I've been following North Carolina pretty much the entire night, and I knew it was going to be a close race, but I really thought that Biden was going to, pull through there just by a little bit. But after watching it for the past few hours, we're at 95% of estimated voters reported, and Trump still has that little edge over Biden, so that really threw me off tonight.
Absolutely. North Carolina, definitely one of the races that we're really keeping an eye on, and it might be a while before we know the final results. Let's stop here. Lindsay Fine, what do you have?
One thing that I've been following is the Montana Senate race. Right now, the Democrats are trying to flip the Senate, and part of that is Montana. Right now, their outgoing Democratic governor is going up against the incumbent Republican. And it's interesting because during his time in office already, the Democratic governor had the highest approval rating of any elected official in Montana, and now he's leading to flip the Montana Senate seat from red to blue this election.
Democrats looking to pick up seats in the Senate, trying to get that majority. Let's stop over here. Nick, what do you have for us?
If you look at Miami-Dade County down in Florida, that is just an incredible mess up for the Biden campaign. They're almost down 10% from what Hillary Clinton was in 2016. She was at 64%. He's only at 53%. If that trend stays the same, that is going to be why Trump will win Florida if that happens.
All right, thank you. Sammy, let's stop at you. What do you have?
So I found it really interesting how the way the votes were counted. So I found that in Florida,
The mail-in ballots were counted first, so it was looking like it was trending towards blue. But then when we got more into the in-person votes, then it trended more towards red. So that was interesting.
All right, let's spin around. Let's go over here. Chile Adele.
Right now, we're looking at Iowa, and it's really interesting because we've had a couple swings in the pollings leading up to the election. Right now, Donald Trump with a slight lead over Joe Biden, but I'm looking at this Senate race between Joni Ernst and Teresa Greenfield, and this polling was especially tight as the weeks came on. We saw Greenfield go up. Now, with the real clear average, we have Joni Ernst up, and right now she's currently slightly up over Teresa Greenfield. As we move through this race, about 76% reporting.
That's one of those bellwether Senate races that in Iowa, Ernst needs to win if Republicans are going to do well in that state and in the Senate. Olivia, let's stop here. One last stop.
Yeah, I've been looking a lot at Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania from the start has been said to be the deciding state in the election. But as of right now, Trump is leading, I think, 56, and I think Biden has 42. So it's leading a lot. It's very red right now, but a lot of the mail-in ballots haven't been counted, which statistically should favor Democrats. So it's going to be a very tight race that we probably will not know for a while.
And Democrats built such an advantage in those mail-in votes. We'll see how those factor in once they continue to be counted. Michael, Brandon, that's it from the War Room. Let's go back to you guys.
Thanks, Manny, and don't go away. We'll have continuing coverage from our live reporters. We're following one of the most competitive races in the nation here in Central New York. We'll be right back.
Here's your check.
Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay.
God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham-bam minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
We've got about 25 minutes left with you with our 2020 election coverage. I'm Brandon Ross. He's Michael Furnari. And again, as we're starting to see these results come in, it's becoming ever more clear this is probably going to come down to Pennsylvania. But let's talk to the broader aspect of it. Let's look at the big picture of the next couple of years, regardless of who's the president. It has become clear that this race is going to be tight, A. B, the Senate is going to be close. It could go either way. But also C, the Democrats are going to likely hold the House based on what we're seeing right now. And it's going to be interesting to see. I talked about the Georgia runoff dynamics with those Senate races. We now know for sure that Kelly Loeffler and Raphael Warnock will be the two candidates going in that runoff. We still don't have a result from the Dave Perdue, John Ossoff side of things. But it should be interesting to see how this all fleshes out, because it seems like whoever wins the presidency is not going to have an iron grip power on Congress.
You're absolutely right, Brandon. You mentioned all those different things. We may have a divided House. We may have it divided between the presidency and the Senate. What that is that's a recipe for gridlock. So what we're going to see over the next year and a half, people expecting sweeping legislative changes are going to be disappointed. What we're looking at right now is the presidency is going to be a big referendum. One thing to be very cautious of is over the next couple months, if we're looking at a situation where the Dems control the House, the Dems control the Senate, and President Trump ends up with a majority with the Electoral College, and he ends up the president again, I think we're going to see a lot of very heated conversation about the Electoral College, because that's going to be the thing that may end up keeping Trump in the office, and it may keep Trump in office after a week's, maybe month-long counting process here. So what we're looking at right now, when you look at an election that's going to be incredibly close electorally, when you look at an election that's going to take weeks to count, there's really a lot at stake right now as far as just trust in our institutions, trust in the process. I think, it's really going to be tooth and nail over this next year and a half.
One last note before we move along. Again, we talked about Pennsylvania. That's going to take at least a few days. And again, Maine, that 2nd congressional district, if that ends up coming into play, and maybe Nebraska too as well, that could really be interesting, and that could really drag this process out from days to weeks. And earlier tonight, we introduced you to Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins. Citrus TV reporter Ricky Sayer is actually at Green Party's local HQ right now. Ricky, how's Howie feeling with the results so far?
Thanks, guys. I'm here with Green Party presidential nominee Howie Hawkins. Now, I know it's election night now. Results are coming in. How is it going for your race? We know you've been trying to pick up those ballot lines.
Well, I don't have numbers. I've been on a Zoom call with Greens around the country for the last 4.5 hours, and we've been talking about whatever happens, we know that the issues and concerns we have are not going to be addressed, no matter what the balance of power between Democrats and Republicans in the presidency, the U.S. Senate, the House, and the state legislatures. We got a climate crisis, and neither the Democrats or Republicans got a program to deal with that. We got an inequality crisis, where life expectancies are in decline, particularly among working class people. Because we've had 45 years of stagnant wages while health care and housing costs are going through the roof. And then we have a new nuclear arms race. The bullets in the atomic scientist is the doomsday clock, the closest it's ever been to midnight. It's not even addressed. So we know we're going to keep organizing around these issues and put them forward and run candidates and keep advancing our program.
But you're likely to get the 4th most votes out of anyone, and you're just out of the loop as anyone else.
In terms of what the numbers are?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we did have CNN on, but they weren't covering the Green numbers, so I just don't know yet. But I do know whatever the numbers are, and whether we got ballot lines or not, we're going to keep going, because we're not getting real solutions from the major parties. And these are issues that, I'm talking to a student, TV station, young folks. This is your future. If there's no response to the climate thing, and we don't provide economic opportunity for young people who are having a particularly hard time compared to previous generations, we're going to fight for our future. That's what we're going to do.
You mentioned earlier to me that you were watching CNN and you noticed it's a closer race than you expected. Is that something that concerns you, in just the sense of you're hoping that this country becomes more and more progressive over time?
Well, I don't even know how to evaluate that, because I'm glancing at CNN and its early results, and then every state has different protocols for counting the mail-in ballots. So I don't even know, when I look at the states, I just know at the headlines, they haven't called it. If it was clearly in the early states, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina were for Biden, it would have been over early. Doesn't look like that's what it is. So it's going to take a while to find out. But I'm going to go get something to eat and then, turn on TV and try to figure out what the hell's going on. Because I just haven't had the opportunity yet. It's still early. On the West Coast, I got cousins in Hawaii.
Got it.
At this hour, they could vote.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to see what it is.
Howie, thank you so much for talking to us. Michael, Brandon, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Now, we're going to be looking at this electoral map. This is really going to be, a long night here, and we've got our Manny Martinez in studio to discuss this with us. So, Manny, the swing states have been coming and going. We've been hearing a ridiculous amount of results. So, talk to me. What are we looking at here? What are the states that look good? What are the states that we're going to need a lot more time to figure out an accurate picture of?
Well, let's start with just what we know is going to take a long time, and it feels like we've been beating a dead horse with this one. and that's Pennsylvania. And Anthony Dabbundo joins us now in studio here. He can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But another one that I think that does look good, excuse me, is the fact that Arizona just went, or is going to go, for Joe Biden. That is a state that if he is going to reel this one back in, he absolutely needs to have. And I feel like I've been saying that for a while in terms of states that Joe Biden needs to have to win this election, because they're starting to, the gains that he wanted to make, they started to slip away, and they did today. So they need to come back to him.
Yeah, when we take a look at Arizona, Biden holding an 8-point lead, that has not changed as the election day results have come in. That's very different from what we've seen in the other states where Biden built an early vote lead and then it came crumbling down, what we saw in Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. As we look at Arizona, solidly blue. That's a big win for the Democrats. Mark Kelly likely headed to the Senate. He will win. There will be 2 Arizona senators that are Democrats and 2 Florida Republican senators. That has never happened before. That's incredible. We're in the midst of quite a realignment. When we do look at Ohio, the margins do matter here, because when we look at a state like, Ohio, yeah, Trump 52, Biden 45. That's about 2 points worse than Trump did in Ohio 4 years ago. There's still some votes to count. The margins can change. We think there's a few ballots left out of the main ballot, and there still could be votes coming in if they're postmarked by today. So Ohio is going to be relatively close to 2016. And what does that mean for Pennsylvania? When we look at Pennsylvania, Trump holding a lead there right now in the polling and in the numbers, but we still have a lot of votes from Philadelphia left to count. Erie is expecting to get votes in soon as well.
So many. And if you're Donald Trump and you're looking at what's going on in Pennsylvania, you're kind of looking at it with a bit of a bated breath here, right?
Yes, if Trump can win Pennsylvania, that's the tipping point. He is likely to be the president. There is a scenario where if Wisconsin and Michigan stay blue, and Arizona is blue, and Nebraska's 2nd district goes blue, it would be 270 to 268. But right now, Pennsylvania probably is what decides it.
So this really feels like this is exactly what everybody was thinking going into it, and the fact that it was going to be a bit of a razor-tight race, and that's what it's shaping up to be tonight.
Absolutely.
No question about that. And I think something I want to ask you guys, and you mentioned, Anthony, the possibility of a 270, 268, but also included in that possibility, you didn't mention it there, but honestly, the idea of a 269, 269 doesn't seem that unfeasible at the moment.
Yeah, Nate Silver actually just tweeted about that. He says that the odds are at about 6%, and they are raising by the minute. So what we're seeing is that Arizona going blue is huge for the Democrats because it allows them to lose one of those states in the Rust Belt. They can lose one of Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania and still win the presidency. They cannot lose 2. So that's what we're seeing. And I want to look at Minnesota too, because I think Minnesota may be looking a little interesting so far.
So one last question for you guys. We're going to hear from you a little bit later on tonight, but I want to get you on this now. I know it's going to be really difficult, but gun to your head, I need a prediction from you guys for the presidency. The big cheese.
Ooh, well, you're really putting us on the spot here. And it's just been such a tumultuous night, I feel like. So much has happened. But I'm going to have to say that I think Joe Biden is going to end up finding those votes that he needs to come back and win this one.
I will disagree. I would rather be Donald Trump right now.
Well, that wasn't the question. The question was, who do you think wins?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to Philly turnout. It did pick up late in the day for the Democrats. They're nearing their 2016 numbers. We'll see, and the suburbs still need to report too, so it's going to be very close in Pennsylvania. I can't wait.
Thank you guys very much. And now for an update on the Katko-Bolter race here in central New York. The Onondaga County Board of Elections is saying Bolter is down by thousands of votes right now, but it is still too close to call. Greg Bradbury is here for one last look from the Embassy Suites where John Katko is holding his campaign event. Greg, what do you have for us?
Yeah, guys, like you mentioned, it is too close to call. However, when you look at the Onondaga County Board of Elections, they're reporting that John Katko has about a 20,000 vote lead over Dana Bolter. Now, throughout the night, we have not heard or seen Katko, and one of the reasons is because, like you mentioned, this race is not over. Coming on Monday, there's going to be about 53,000 absentee ballots that are then opened and begun to get counted. So all hope is not lost for the Bolter campaign, and there is still quite a few votes to get counted to determine this congressional seat. So there's lots to come. We'll keep you updated with the latest. Reporting from the GOP headquarters, I'm Greg Bradbury, Citrus TV News.
Thanks, Greg. And coming up, we have one final look at swing states across the country and the election as a whole. Stay with us.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back into the back end of our election coverage. States are finally coming to some more decisions, and we have one more call we can make for you right now. The state of Ohio is staying with President Trump. He won by 8 points in 2016, looking to have a similar margin here today. And we're going to check in with Ricky Sayer for one last time. Ricky, what do you have for us?
We've yet to hear from the Vulture campaign tonight at all. We've yet to hear tonight at all from the Vulture campaign. We have heard a little bit from students. The general idea is that people are more and more nervous as this night has gone on. In some cases, on both sides, as this election becomes closer and closer, still so many states left. People, they really do believe it could be a while until we hear a final result here. So just for now, it's just a lot of waiting and seeing. Students and just everyone else, you heard it from Howie, they don't know what to think. For now, here reporting live on the south side of Syracuse, Ricky Sayer, Citrus TV News.
All right, thank you. We've been on for 3.5 hours, and this has been a lot to deal with, Mike. We're still having these results come in, and I want to get Manny and Anthony involved on this too. I think looking ahead to what the next few days and weeks are going to look like, we're going to get off the air without making a call here. And not only that, we know for a fact that we're not going to know much for a few days even.
So guys, what are we thinking? What are the emotions right now? Because, you know, we're wrapping up the special, and we are not going to be wrapping up discussion of this election because this thing is going to carry on.
Anthony and I came on just after 8:30, and I remember saying that we would have an idea as to where this race was going, but that idea now is just up in the air completely. And Anthony, you have something on ballot processing in those Midwestern states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota?
Yeah, Philadelphia has announced, Pennsylvania has announced they will not have all of their results until Friday. That is when they expect to be able to finish processing all of these ballots. Wisconsin has said they will not be able to declare a winner tonight because they are still counting ballots. Michigan has said they need more time. Without a call in any of those three states, we will not have a president winner tonight. We will probably not even have one into the late hours of tomorrow morning. It's going to be crazy. But like we said, we would know a lot right when we came on the air. And we knew right away that Trump was getting the numbers he needed in the South.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he got those numbers. He won those states relatively convincingly. North Carolina very close. He had managed to avoid the Texas surge, the Florida surge. And he got it to the point where we knew that if it was going to be really close, it was going to come down to these Midwestern states and the mail ballots. And here we are. And I would lean Trump but I think it's very, very close.
And I think one of the interesting points in terms of those mail ballots is the fact that a lot of these secretaries of states, they were up front and they said, yeah, it might be a while until we fully certify. But even with those certifications, we thought we'd have a clue, but we really don't. And in Wisconsin specifically, the governor, Tony Evers, he said that by the next morning, Wisconsin, we would know who won that state. And now it won't be for a couple of days. Guys, I just think that this is quite the summation, the summary. Like, of course, that this election season ends, or like, well, it won't end. Of course, we're here at this moment. Just, why wouldn't we be?
Guys, so I've got a question for you, and as we wrap up, I want to make sure we're really thorough in what we're looking at. So, Anthony, Manny, we were talking about those southern states. One of the things we were talking about in big detail was how the suburbs may be a key, and people were projecting that Trump's losses in the suburbs were going to be enough to lose him those southern states. What have we seen tonight, and what is different from how people were projecting this to go? Because clearly, what we're seeing right now is not what we saw in polling over the last month. What has changed?
We've had historic turnout tonight, and let's make no mistake. And while historic turnout, we tend to talk about the big cities and the suburbs having huge numbers and running it up. We've seen huge numbers out of the rurals tonight. Donald Trump has turned out his base. For example, Cambria County, Pennsylvania, it's a rural county, it's a former steel town. Joe Biden beat Hillary Clinton's numbers by multiple thousand votes. Donald Trump beat his numbers by about the same amount of votes. So where do we end up? Exactly the same where we were 4 years ago, just with a bunch more votes. Now, the suburbs are going to be an issue for Donald Trump. They've proven to be an issue where Biden is picking up some numbers across most of the Midwest. That's why I think Nebraska 2 is likely to flip, which could break a tie. So we're seeing that the suburbs may decide. We have to look to see what we get out of the Pennsylvania suburbs and Philadelphia, the Detroit suburbs, and the Madison suburbs.
And another one of the things here that I'd like to point out is the fact that, coming into this election, perhaps people predicted that there would be a big blue wave. And I think that, that scared a bunch of people. And now what we're seeing and what we have seen tonight in many states, Florida, Ohio, is a red response.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it, in fact. And the question was, politics are very cyclical, right? 2008, Obama gets this huge turnout. People who have never voted before. 2010, Democrats get hammered in the midterms. Everybody says, oh, surely it's going to be a red wave in 2012. And Obama's coalition says, no, we're coming back out, we're voting again. We want President Obama for 4 more years. Well, in a lot of ways, we're seeing a lot of the same things tonight. 2016, Trump gets his base, new voters that we've never seen before, coming out of the polls saying, I'm voting for Donald Trump. 2018, they don't show up, he's not on the ballot. Democrats roll, except in Florida. And in 2020, the Trump people are back and bigger than ever, really, in these rural areas.
So quickly here, guys, before we wrap up, if you were to summarize what we've seen tonight in a couple of sentences, what would you say?
This is honestly just the beginning, and buckle up, wait for more. Everybody get some sleep, and we'll see how tomorrow morning goes.
I don't envision that I'll be getting much sleep, but I think when we talk about this election, going forward, and this is a conversation that Michael and I have had many times, we're in the middle of a serious political realignment. And the numbers that Trump is getting with the working class Hispanics and even picking off a few of the working class black voters, the GOP's transition into a populist working class party is only being accelerated by Trump.
Right.
And if they keep turning out, the Democrats are going to have to answer for that.
So many people were waiting, for today to be a rebuke of President Trump and his first term. It absolutely has not been so far.
All right, so we've been on the air for 3.5 hours, and unfortunately, it looks like we're going to go off the air without making a call. The race is still too close to call.
We're going to have a couple more questions here. CitrusTV will have you covered as every single vote gets counted here in this election. We'll have updates for you every day on Live at 6 until we have an electoral victor.
We will also keep you covered on results here in New York as they are finalized. So far, we know that John Katko and Dana Balter are still tight.
And lawsuits may come in floods over the next couple of days, surely in the upper Midwest, trying to challenge the results of the election. CitrusTV will be keeping track of those as well.
And it's important to remember that while we live in the information age and immediacy is most certainly the norm, the U.S. has survived many close elections before. We've not always lived in a world where we know the winner on election night. In fact, it happened just 20 years ago. We got through it then, and we can get through it now. That wraps up our coverage tonight.
Be sure to keep an eye on our Twitter at CitrusTV News for more updates throughout the night. I'm Michael Furnari.
I'm Manny Martinez.
I'm Anthony Dabbundo.
And I'm Brandon Ross. Have a great night, Syracuse, and stay safe out there.